And you see her as she's looking at you from afar, as you're ordering another shot at the bar. And you know she's got that fight, and you know she sings with no pride. But tonight, let's see what she's got tonight. So I say hello there. Hey, how you doing? Well, hello there. Hey, how are you? I said hello there. I'm standing here in front, entertaining you. It's true. Let's have some fun tonight. 'Cause Angie's got the mind. And I say hello there. Hey, how are you? Let's have some fun too. Thank you. Thank you.
Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the
I
right
didn't
spot.
even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
Well,
Sometimes it
hello
was just
there.
meant to be that way. Hello there.
Let's have some fun tonight.
Thank you.
Now I get what that song means.
See? All about the lyrics, baby.
Well, we have a special night of talking
With
IT.
Ange, SR, and Tony.
Yeah, Glenn's got a gig tonight, but he's here in spirit. And we're going to be talking about something that's very close to home for us. And we've got the Lady of Lyrics, Lehigh's own Lady of Lyrics, to talk about it. We're going to be talking lyricism, song construction, melody, and how to make your words work. Yeah, put this.
How to write
overlay.
hit songs.
Constructing the music.
Yeah.
And what we have lined up, we've got a couple of different videos from some cool new sources. Can you see the video? Can you see the page?
Yes.
So the first one, is the lyric rights and licenses explained, because I think for lyricists, this is good to understand. It's a little different than, the instrumentalists. That one comes from the modern music. We've got simple songwriting formulas that changed everything for me. How to write songs. This channel, fantastic. 7 tips to write better lyrics for beginners from the Prose. Songwriters Shop, another new one that I found. Love this channel. The crazy easy trick to write great lyrics, the flip method. And that's something I'm interested to see your ideas on, Ange, because this is one that I've come across a lot on YouTube. That's coming from How to Write Songs. What is lyrical prose? Plus the poetic techniques you need to write it. This is Lyrical Language Lab. Totally sounds like an Ange channel. How lyrical rap lost its cool, in the last couple of decades.
You've
Seems
definitely
like
seen a big change.
Yeah, it seems like the rap game has changed lyrically. The storytelling power of music. Stephen Fowler, an awesome TED Talk episode.
I don't know anything about stories, Tony. Next.
Yeah. Lyrics first versus melody first. This is another one that I'm looking forward to. Which is the best approach? And we're going to see their songwriting tips, and I can't wait to see your impression on lyrics or melody first, because I've seen you do both. And how to put melody to lyrics. She calls it a songwriting hack, but I don't think it's so much a hack as, it's an approach. And in some cases, sometimes it's easier when you have a hack. That one comes from DAWter. DAWter. Oh, now I get it.
I would prefer.
It makes sense when you say it. So
that's awesome. It seems like we got a lot of great videos to watch and discuss tonight. I hope you all chime in. You can also go ahead over onto youtube.com or twitch.tv/Angified, or also the Talkin IT. Go subscribe. They have the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel up. So youtube.com/Talkin with Glenn and Tony. Yep.
Yeah,
or
we
the
got our own channel.
twitch.tv. Same Talkin IT with Glenn and Tony. So make sure to go ahead, share your support, subscribe to those channels, and share the love.
I still haven't
Tony,
mastered
just use your thumb. This way.
Okay, I can do it better that way.
That way?
I still like this one with that. I don't know. I keep disappearing. Whatever.
Giant potato.
Here.
You
No,
keep
still gone.
disappearing into yourself.
I am. Woo. Okay. I think the left side's the better half.
I don't think you have a bad half.
Well, that could be a good song title. So what would we like to do first?
Well, the first one I want to start with is the lyrical rights. What are lyrical rights? Because I think it's important to understand this. If you're a musician, you want to know what your rights are and what you're getting into when you write songs and put them out there with other people. And this one comes from the Modern Musician over on YouTube, and he's got lots of videos on making music in the modern age. So this one's a nice little shorty, about 8 minutes. It's going to explain.
Making fun of me? Oh, okay. Sorry.
You're the other little shorty. Okay, so let's take a look at what lyrical rights are.
And what you're not. Sorry.
Are lyric rights. Lyrics are integral to modern music. Many of the most compelling songs in the world use lyrics to tell a story and relay emotions through music. Songwriters should know the basic rights associated with the lyrics they create. Music publishers should know how to monetize these rights through licenses and protect the works of their songwriters. Everyone interested in the music business should gain a better appreciation for the impact and significance of lyrics. The topics we will cover in this video: what is a lyric? What is a lyric right? The lyric license, recording hit songs with changed lyrics, lyrics on merchandise, the NMPA and lyric sites. Stay until the end and check your knowledge by answering a few quiz questions. What is a lyric? A lyric is any word or phrase in a musical composition. Lyrics spoken together are most often partitioned into choruses and verses within a song. The writer of lyrics is known as a lyricist. A distinction is made here between a composer who writes the song's melody and a lyricist who writes the words sung to the tune of the melody. However, it is often the case that the lyricist and the composer for a given song will be the same person, known generally as a songwriter. Lyrics can be sung, spoken rhythmically, or simply spoken. Many genres of music possess a distinct lyrical style. An obvious example is the rhythmic lyricism of rap and hip-hop music. What is a lyric right? Keep in mind the distinction between a sound recording copyright and an underlying composition copyright. Underlying composition copyrights are administered by music publishers on behalf of songwriters. Both music and lyrics make up the underlying composition copyright. When two songwriters co-write a song, typically both songwriters will contribute to both the lyrics and the music. Sometimes two songwriters create the lyrics and music entirely separately. In this case, each songwriter owns 50% of the total underlying composition copyright. One songwriter is not the sole owner of the lyrics while the other is the sole owner of the music. Each songwriter owns 50% of the total song, music, lyrics, and all. This is an oversimplified situation in terms of copyright law. Depending on genre and territory, songwriters often negotiate the actual ownership percentage based on their contributions to the composition. Any royalties collected on the song for either party must be split according to the same ownership percentages unless a different royalty percentage is specified in a separate agreement. Even the reprinting of lyrics, a royalty garnering action, results in 50% of print royalties to the other songwriter because you both share in the song's underlying composition copyright. While the above scenario, in which one songwriter composes the lyrics to a song entirely independent from the other songwriter, may seem unusual at first, it's more common than you think. Think of the amazing duo of Elton John and Bernie Taupin. The lyric license. According to findlegalforms.com, a lyricist, also referred to as a licensee, and a company who desires to license and promote the song lyrics enter into a license for use of song lyrics. Oftentimes, this agreement takes place between the company and the music publisher, because the publisher typically owns and/or controls the lyrics along with the other rights of the song. This agreement sets out the specific details of the arrangement, including granting of the right to use the lyrics, the purposes for which the lyrics may be used, and any restrictions on the licensed lyrics used. It also sets out the licensee fee, which will be paid, and the independent contractor status of the parties. It's important for this license agreement to be clearly detailed in writing. A well-written license for use of song lyrics could potentially save both parties a world of trouble in the event of miscommunication or contractual disagreements. Recording hit songs with changed lyrics. Occasionally, a music publisher will receive a request from a recording artist or producer to alter the lyrics of a well-known song for the purposes of a re-recording and release under a new or similar title. We see this most in the advertising world. Given that any success the new recording receives would be inherently reliant upon the success of the old version, most music publishers request the ownership of the copyright and subsequent publishing rights to the new song and new lyrics. If this is the case, the new lyricist will receive no publishing royalties for their work. However, the lyricist for the new song should be able to receive writer's credit and therefore a share of the mechanical and performance royalties. Many publishers will refuse outright to allow a recording artist to change the lyrics to a popular song for risk this will alter sales and royalties from it. In addition, many songwriters have the right as part of their publishing agreement to grant final approval to any lyric changes. Lyrics on merchandise. The use of lyrics on merchandise such as clothing, coffee mugs, mouse pads, keychains, and more continues to be a valuable source of royalties for songwriters and publishers. Owners of the copyright can enter individual agreements with specific manufacturers. Often, they will agree to a 50-50 split of net revenue, which equates to roughly 15% of retail price. The NMPA and lyric sites. Websites that display lyrics garner massive amounts of traffic and ad revenue. In 2013, the National Music Publishers Association sent takedown notices to the top 50 unlicensed lyric sites, claiming their use of songwriters' lyrics should require a royalty payment. The NMPA wanted lyric sites to acquire official licenses, which would grant songwriters and publishers a share of the site's ad revenue. These takedown notices are most likely foreshadowing a copyright infringement lawsuit against the sites, which the NMPA claims have ignored the law and profited off the songwriters' creative works. However, unlike the infamous RIAA file sharing lawsuits, the NMPA is saying that they are not targeting individual fan sites. As of 2019, this lawsuit has not yet occurred. Nearly all lyric sites are still operational, though some of the top 50 mentioned by the NMPA have since obtained proper licensing for the use of lyrics. Check your knowledge. Question 1. Is the lyric right part of sound recording copyright or composition copyright? Question 2. Songwriter 1 writes the lyrics, Songwriter 2 writes the music and melody of the song, and they agreed on 50-50 split share. If the song generates $1,000 from reprinting the lyrics on merchandise, how much will each of the songwriters earn and why? Let us know your answers in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Sorry. I was feeling some melody there. Those are great advice. Oh, Tony, you're muted. Hashtag unmuted, Tony.
That's why I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
That was interesting what they were talking about with the lyric websites, because there are a lot of lyric websites out there. You know, I use A to Z whenever I do a cover to put the lyrics in, and I didn't know that they were being targeted like that, because all they really do is just put the lyrics up that are public domain, you know, information available out there. They just put them into a nice catalog for you to find the lyrics, but they do generate ad revenue.
They do. So they are technically benefiting from those artists.
And you know,
that's crazy.
We'd looked at other videos about mechanical and performance licenses, and with a lot of these distribution sites these days, they do a 50-50 split between the distributors and the artists. So in those kind of deals, then technically if there's a lyricist and a songwriter and they're getting 50-50,
that's a 25-25.
It's a 25-25 split.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like SR's getting some popcorn over there. Might have to make a song about that later.
Well, and he finished his water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Chips.
Tips are just gonna make him thirsty again. So you might as well grab another bottle of water and sit back and see what else we got.
But that's good to see, like, how they recognize the contribution from the word writers, the lyricists, and the separation between, say, the composer and the lyricist, and the 50-50 approach that they take there is not about, like, oh, well, 20% of the music is lyrics and 80% is music. They really just differentiate who's part of the song.
Well, what else, is we hear on BandLab, a lot of people, do covers or not even like even the music. I believe I heard an artist the other day do a piece, and he had Snoop Dogg on top of it, and I mean, it was done brilliantly. But if Snoop were to hear that, he did. I don't know, like, if he would be like, I'm down for this, and if I'm down for this, like, you know what I mean? He would
But
he would definitely want to cut because his voice is in there.
yes, if they're using his voice, then that in
But he can
itself.
also, but he's also taking a chance of being sued by using a big artist like that. So
And you notice what they mentioned about, like, rewriting a song, especially
yes,
for advertising, which you see all
yeah,
the time. Like, they'll
you
take
Gotta have the
gotta,
money and time.
yeah, they'll take a popular song and they'll
yes,
rewrite it to advertise a product, and just because you rewrote it for an ad doesn't make you a songwriter there of the original song.
correct.
You can get some writing credits for it afterwards, but the way that they pay on the royalties, it still goes to the original song owners.
Yes. Yes. So if you want to use somebody else's melodies and music and lyrics, make sure you reach out to the original artist or their publisher to find out and get permission first. That way you could actually possibly get a chance to collect any type of royalties off of it and benefit from it rather than lose and possibly get sued.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost always going to be the publisher that you're going to have to contact. Musicians don't tend to be the ones who handle the rights in all of this. It's publishers and lawyers.
That's right. So be her, be original, people. Don't steal anything. Give credit to the original owners.
Yeah, if you're giving credit, you're not really stealing it. You're giving it tribute.
You're lending, you're borrowing to pay tribute. Yes.
Yeah, I consider it paying homage.
Yes. I consider it inspiration. Because you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't inspired.
Distribute it.
Well, as I could barely hear you.
Yes, crank it.
Well, I mean, if you can get the permission,
Yeah.
or if it's forked, then you could technically just do what you want with it.
Well,
right?
in the case of forking and things like that, with the way BandLab handles forked, like, you acknowledge when you make it forkable that you are allowing people to put stuff on top of it. So with forking, you're not really stepping on anything because the person acknowledged that when they made it forkable.
Yes.
And it's all not for profit. I mean, as far as on BandLab, none of that's for profit. When you start taking that recording, going to SoundCloud or someplace else, this is where it gets more complicated.
Yes. Because
I was saying revamp it, maybe.
somebody could take a fork track and they could go ahead and publish it out and put it out on SoundCloud,
Revamp
DistroKid,
it.
through everything. Now they published it, okay. They're claiming it as theirs, but who knows? Maybe it started with somebody else and it got lost in the way, and that original artist never got credit because he forked it. So he pretty much gave it away the moment he hit fork.
That's
Yeah,
There
you
it
perfect.
is.
you kind of do give some of your rights away to make it forkable.
So
And
anybody that does fork it, thank you. Well, BandLab does that too with their contest. Some of them, when they supply some of the beats and things of that, and also the loops that they use, those are all free to use.
yeah, and if you do put your song into one of their contests, you do have to understand you are giving them the rights to use that song in anything promotional that they should choose. Same thing happens on Facebook. You put your pictures up on Facebook. If Facebook decides they want to make an advertisement and they want to use your pictures in their advertisement, they can. It's in there in the fine writing.
Mm-hmm.
So it works the same way with BandLab when it comes to songs submitted for contests.
And BandLab also does happen to have, if they put out a song that is for their contest and somebody has a problem, with putting it on their YouTube channels or anything else like that, you can contact BandLab about that and they will go ahead and look into that, because that is based for the contest and for everybody to use, not for anybody to profit from, except for the winners, of course.
Yeah, as long as you're not doing things for profit, you're really safe. Nobody's going to come after you for money when you're not making any money. But the moment you do something for profit, you got to get your ducks in a row.
Yes.
Mechanical licenses, something Ange has been drilling in our heads for years.
I definitely have. But it's all with love.
And it's good advice.
What else we got, Tim?
Okay, so the next one, this new site that I came across, love it. Her advice sounds a lot like yours. I was going through a couple of her videos. I'm like, wow, man, I feel like I'm hearing Ange in another person's
In another
voice.
person's body.
But it's all so like spot on. And she actually gets in here a couple of times tonight because I could have done the whole night just on this channel. There's so many
Well,
good videos on lyricism coming from this site. It's
I don't know.
how to write songs, and that's at HTWS on YouTube. She actually got the acronym.
Yeah.
And this one, she talks about a simple songwriting formula that changed everything for her, and simplified the approach of doing your lyrics.
Angie looks like the color of purple a little bit, slightly, and this one's got a little bit of a white hue.
He said she was purple. Well, just don't tell her she's pink. She
It's
don't
like Martian
pink.
color. I don't know why you're so purple today.
Too cute. Oops, you can't see it because I'm green.
There
And
we
she's
go.
too cute.
That's why I keep disappearing, because I'm wearing
now your
green.
tone looks great.
Well, thank you. I'll sit back then and let's go ahead and check out
You
the
turn
simple
purple again.
songwriting formula that changed everything for me.
Yep,
Hopefully
coming
it
from.
changes everything for you too.
We're gonna learn how to write songs.
Yeah.
Do you have folders full of half-written and unfinished songs? You are not alone. In this video, I'm going to share with you a songwriting formula that has changed everything for me as a songwriter. Learning this simple formula has helped me identify great song ideas, to know whether the idea is likely to be a good song at all, and it has also helped me be able to write better songs faster, and I'm excited to share it with you too. This is a formula for thinking about song ideas before you've even written them. And the formula is all about finding a writable idea. So what's a writable idea? Well, here is our formula. A writable idea is three things: a concept plus a title plus a song map. I'm going to break each of these three components down in detail. And when we get to song maps, I'm not only going to show you examples of great song maps, but I'm also going to share with you a free PDF of a song map template that I've created just for you. If you want to grab it right now, the link is in the video notes. Why is understanding a writable idea so important? When we have the combination of these three components, it gives our song structure and a plan. It guarantees before we've even written the song at all that the song can be written. The combination of these three things is almost like giving your song a bucket, and your job is merely to fill the bucket rather than splashing water around everywhere and hoping it accumulates into something, which is often what the songwriting process can feel like when we don't have that structure. So let's dig into the first component of our formula, the concept. What is a concept? A concept is the general idea of what you want to write about. In the book Tunesmith, written by the very celebrated and famous songwriter Jimmy Webb gives an example of a song concept. So a song concept is something like, I want to write a song about someone who goes through acute mood swings from euphoria to emotional exhaustion. I love this person and want to address the song to him. A song concept can also just be an interesting angle of approach. For example, I want to write a love song about the person I want to marry, but I'm going to address the song to the person's father who's refusing to let me propose to that person. That's the first component of our three-part formula, but here is the crucial thing. As Jimmy Webb says, simply having the song concept is not yet a song idea. To quote Jimmy Webb, if, however, you add the following sentence, I want to call the song Problem Child, then you have an idea, even though the song may not end up being called Problem Child. The second component of our formula for finding writable ideas is having a title. Giving your song concept a title does two important things. The first important thing that it does is it gives your song an anchor, which a lot of people call a hook. It says, this song is about this one thing. This is the way that I'm going to talk about this idea that I have. If my idea is a house, this is the door that I'm going to walk through to get into the house. It is actually about limiting possibility, limiting options, and putting parameters around all the big ideas. And that brings us to our second important thing that picking a title does for your song concept. It gives you a target for all of your lyrics. It means that every line of lyric in the song has a destination in mind. Let's look at an example of this in Ed Sheeran's song First Times. So the concept of this song is all about Ed Sheeran writing a love song for his partner in which he's celebrating all of the small, intimate, daily first times that he gets with his partner, which are way more emotionally significant than the epic, grandiose first times of being a world famous performer. The title of this song is First Times. And if we actually peek inside the lyrics, we can see that every single line of lyric from the first line is forging a direct path to the target idea. First times. That first line there is all about the first time he played Wembley. So that's a grandiose, epic first time that he's using to create contrast to the real first times that he's talking about in this song. All of the first times that he has shared with the love of his life. Choosing a title gives you a destination. And when you have a destination in mind, all of your lyrics have a direction from the beginning of the song. But let's remember an important thing. You can change the title as you go. You're not contractually obliged to stick with the first title that you pick. But the key is giving your concept that direction through choosing a title puts you in motion. And it's that momentum that will often set you on the path to discovering new and better ideas. Let's talk about our final component of this formula, the song map. So in essence, a song map is nothing more complicated than having an idea in your mind about how you could approach this title from at least two different angles where the meaning and the emotion will grow as the verses progress. The concept plus the title needs to contain in it a clear way that your song idea could start, develop, and then escalate. Even a song like Happy by Pharrell Williams has a clear song map in it. The title of that song is Happy, and the chorus is all about happy. But let's look at the song map. Verse 1 is merely a description of how happiness feels, the sense of elation. Verse 1 is all about describing simply what it feels like to be that happy. But verse 2 is not just a reiteration of the same idea. Verse 2 introduces a new idea. It introduces the idea of obstacle. It's talking about voices getting in the way, voices talking this and that, trying to bring me down. It's all about introducing challenge or obstacle to the feeling. This is actually a usable song map if you ever want to write a song just about a clear mood or a feeling, which has lots of applications in the market for songwriting. So for example, in film and TV, songs need to convey a clear mood or emotion. And this is a great song map for writing songs like that are not narrative, but really just clearly focused on describing a mood or emotion. So the song map that we can extract from this is verse 1, how it feels, verse 2, an obstacle or a challenge to that feeling. And when we understand that song map, you can see how that could apply to any feeling at all. There are two other song maps that I want to show you that I think of as universal song maps, which means the song map itself is a clear trajectory from beginning, middle to end, and a way that we can approach the same title or same hook every single time with compounding emotional impact. So the first song map looks like this. We start with the problem, intensification, escalation. A great example of this is the song Slow Dancing in a Burning Room by John Mayer. When we peek inside that lyric, what we can see, this song as a concept is all about a relationship that is on the brink of collapse. The extraordinary title of this song is an incredible image, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And the song map here starts with the narrator of this song sensing that there's a problem. The two characters can no longer connect with each other. Then the problem intensifies. Not only are they not connecting, but they're actively arguing with each other. They're picking fights. And then the final point of escalation is not just picking fights, but deliberately trying to hurt each other. We have a clear song map here of problem, intensification, and escalation. Another super usable and repeatable song map is called situation, context, consequence. In this song map, we tend to start in the present moment. We describe a situation that again is really introducing the problem or the story. The development is where we zoom the camera lens out. We might go back in time to talk about how we got to this moment. Or we might zoom the lens out to look at a broader social context in which this situation is happening. And the final part of this song map is consequence, which is where we get the emotional heart of the song, the emotional consequence of the situation that was introduced and the context in which it's happening. A great example of this is the song The House That Built Me by Miranda Lambert. In this song, the situation sees Miranda knocking on the door of her childhood home. The context then zooms the camera lens to her childhood. It gives us a broader emotional context to understand why knocking on her childhood door is meaningful to her. And finally, the consequence is contained in the bridge of this song. The emotional consequence of leaving her childhood home was that she got lost. She forgot who she was. And coming back to her childhood home is an attempt to reconnect to her deepest self. Every well-written song has a song map blueprint that you can extract from it and use to write any song that you want about anything that you want. And I've created a free PDF that guides you through a series of specific questions that will help you create super effective song maps every single time. You can grab that for free by clicking in the link in the video notes. I also want to put a massive caveat on this whole idea of song formulas, okay? Because I know that the idea of formulas can rub people the wrong way. Showing you this songwriting formula is not about saying that all songs should be written this way. There's no one way to write songs. And sometimes we absolutely need to just write in order to figure out what we're writing about. However, having this formula available to you is so helpful when you find yourself adrift in unfinished songs with no plan of how to get them finished. If you want one more tip on how to make sure even the first songs you write sound like you've been writing for years, check out this video right here. Happy writing, guys. I'll see you soon.
Love it.
Happy writing, guys. I love it too. That was
Oh, and
awesome.
I can totally relate when she was saying, you know, sometimes you might change your title later. Like
Yes.
that's happened to me on several songs where I started with one title, but as the words define the song, sometimes you find your title later?
Sometimes you take a piece and you give it a name so you remember what the piece is. And then later on, maybe you went ahead and wrote something 10 years ago. And you say, you know what, this piece would work good. Sometimes you will hear something and feel one way when making it, but then listen to it again and you'll hear it a different way. And the lyrics talk to you a different way, which changes the title, the situation, and the whole composition.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
much.
that's what's happened to me at times is like I was in one mood when I started writing, and when I finished the song, I was in a different mood, and the meaning changed.
Yeah. And that
And I
happens with a lot of great songs too. Even, if we listen to the songs from the 80s and 90s, we may have heard it at a certain way because of our age and where we were mentally, in society and in the world. And then we listen to it today and we get a whole different feeling or thought process and vision when we hear it now.
or you read the lyrics and you realize, well, that song wasn't about this; it was about that.
It's true.
I really liked her examples of song maps too. That's that's a good approach to like kind of map out your song, and this going to lead into some of the things we're going to talk about later with storytelling and mapping out the story and how you approach it. Her first example, where the couple was arguing with each other and building up into an argument.
Mhm.
I've got a song that I've been working on for 20 years. That's exactly that kind of structure,
Yeah, yeah.
building up to the climax.
My dad and I actually have one called This Trailer Park. Yeah. Sorry.
You
I
got
actually
one of
I associated with the song map writing number 2 a little bit more when it comes to my storytelling.
yeah,
So that's the one I more so work with is map number 2 when it comes to storytelling.
yeah, and that one really does lend
Yo,
itself to
Jake,
storytelling.
no blend today.
Not everything has to be a story, so.
So that was at HTWS on YouTube, How to Write Songs. That's Kepi Couts and Ben Ramalius. These are 40-year professionals in music. And like I said, this channel is full of lyricist tips, songwriting tips. Awesome resource.
I like it. I love it. Give it to me.
And if you get a little bit of an accent, I mean, it could have been you saying all of that.
Well, maybe I just have to work on that.
Same things you were talking about before we started.
Do it.
And this one lends itself to that one where, what we're talking about, the importance of a title, like why a title is
I believe I can fly.
a title is what allows you to identify your song. If you don't give your songs titles, then
Yeah.
you're not going to remember them. You're just going to be thinking, oh,
I
that
believe I
song
can
in
fly.
A or that song in C. But once you give it a title, you give it some life.
Well,
Yeah.
and you know what? You actually stopped at this part of it, and I know you'll probably have to rewind it, so we can start at the beginning. But this page that you started with, start from a title. When it comes to that title, your song should focus around.
Like I said, I believe I can fly.
I know you can.
Well, so
You're
doesn't
normally
Seal.
a bumblebee. Did you get permission for those lyrics? Just ask.
No, but I believe I can touch the sky.
Okay. Well, let's talk some.
I think about it every night and day.
Well, just don't go jumping off any buildings.
That could be a little messy.
Yeah.
Oops.
So this one's going to give us 7 tips to write better lyrics for beginners from the Prose. And this is another site that just could have done all videos from here covering lyricism tonight. They've got tons of instructional videos on songwriting, and the name actually works really well for their channel. It's at Songwriters Chop Shop on YouTube, and this is where the arrangement and the composition comes into the songwriting. So we're going to see.
We were actually talking all about that right before it as I was reading.
Yeah, no, we were warming up.
Right. I was getting prepared.
Yeah, it was like reading Rainbow.
With Ange.
So 7 tips to write better lyrics for beginners from the Prose.
Song has to begin with an idea that almost encompasses the whole song before you've written it. In other words, it has to have an integrity from the title, a hook, if you like, and then I write backwards from that. I don't just sit down with a guitar and write the first line, because then you have to write a second line. I'll write something that can expand into a whole song, some idea.
If you open your eyes and ears to them, song titles can be everywhere, in conversations, movies, books, tweets, even hate comments. Make a list, keep a journal, or create a document and never let a good idea slip away. Then when an idea for a song comes up, either some chords or a melody, just open up that document and start auditioning song title ideas. Listen to the music you want to write lyrics for and decide what kind of song it is. Is it a love song? Is it a dance song? Then find a title that looks the way the music sounds and describe a situation that tells its story. Or if you're starting with the lyrics, start asking those title ideas what they want to be. Like if the title idea forms an image in your mind, ask it what emotion it could symbolize. Is it a phrase or a common statement? Ask what situation this would work best in. Get the big idea clear in your mind and give your lyrics a direction to focus on and to point towards.
So yeah, for me, when I think of a song, I don't really think of it getting very complex lyrically. I somehow think its framework shouldn't be too complex because that'll, I don't know, make it more difficult to make it a song. And with a song, I like to have hooks. I like to have recurring things.
In real life, big words can make you sound clever, but when it comes to songwriting, they're usually more trouble than they're worth. They can be hard to sing and a nightmare to rhyme. The whole idea is to bring people into the song and let them get lost in it. If they have to stop and think, you're losing their attention. Even slow songs happen quickly, so make it easier on the listener and give it to them straight. Try to use as many one-syllable words as possible. It will make it easier to understand and easier to remember. Use everyday words and keep it conversational, especially in the verses. A conversational lyric that isn't boring or cliche is much harder to pull off than some vague poetic imagery. Don't muddy up the waters just to appear deep.
The incidences, the details, the story itself can be a complete work of imagination. So you have to be able to draw on your own inner truth, but at the same time, you can dress it up in any monkey suit that you want.
Keeping it simple doesn't mean you can't get creative and use your imagination. Focus on the emotions and give them a monkey suit. That's basically a situation or an object, a person, a place or a thing, anything real or imaginary that can be used to symbolize those emotions. Here's a few examples. The Police, Message in a Bottle. That song is about feeling alone, finding it hard to make a genuine connection in our society. Sting picked a castaway as a monkey suit. He still wrote about his honest emotions, but he used all the imagery associated with castaway. Blinding Lights, The Weeknd. That song is about feeling desperate and confused. He used the monkey suit of the blinding lights of Vegas and used that to write about a situation that summed up his emotions. Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo. Getting a driver's license symbolizes freedom and independence, but the lyric contrasts that with her driving around the same streets like being trapped in her heartbreak. Picking a monkey suit will let you write from the heart but also give you the freedom to use your imagination more. You'll get to use imagery that you probably wouldn't have thought of otherwise, and it makes it more fun to write and more interesting for the listener. And if you're new to lyric writing, there's a free cheat sheet linked in the description below that can help you go from no idea to a finished song. For many beginner songwriters, it's way easier to write about emotions and how we feel than it is to describe situations. Describing a situation in a way that isn't boring or cliche or vague is the part of lyric writing that takes the most practice. But looking at most songs, they usually build in intensity as they progress. They get more emotional near the end. So if you find it easier to write about emotions, why not start there? Then you can work backwards and dream up what kind of situation or stories would be the cause of those feelings. Really let loose and don't be afraid to exaggerate those emotional states.
The way I say it is I don't sacrifice quality of song for sort of blanket truth. Like if 7 days, it wasn't the amount of days it was since the event, but 7 days is the best sounding amount of days, I'll say 7 days.
Songs are short and every word is precious real estate. Choosing the right words will make the best use of that space. Just by using the right verbs and nouns, you can make your lyrics say so much more. For example, I got out of bed versus I jumped out of bed versus I crawled out of bed. What do each of these verbs tell us about the emotional state of the singer? A specific verb can create a picture in our mind. We can use external verbs to describe inner feelings, thoughts and emotions. Look at this Paul McCartney lyric from A Day in the Life. Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged the comb across my head. What feelings, state or emotions do those verbs suggest compared to, say, woke up, sprung out of bed, breezed the comb across my head? And be specific with nouns. For instance, love as a noun is vague. That could be replaced by a word like flame, and that would produce a concrete mental image. Like bug versus ant. Be specific and create a mental picture. And we can also personify nouns to express our inner life and attitudes. Look at this lyric from Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. I tumble out of bed and stumble to the kitchen and pour myself a cup of ambition. Cup of ambition is obviously a cup of coffee. She gives the coffee a human attitude, and it shows us immediately who the singer is. Compare that to a dull version of that lyric. I get out of bed and go into the kitchen, pour myself a cup of hot coffee. Organising the flow of your lyrics can make them logical, meaningful, and give them maximum impact. And a really easy way to do this is to use this formula. So, but, as a result. Here's an example from The Weeknd's Save Your Tears. So, I saw you dancing in a crowded room. You look so happy when I'm not with you. But, then you saw me, caught you by surprise. As a result, a single teardrop falling from your eyes. You can use this technique on your song overall, and you can use it within the sections. Check out this video if you want a full breakdown.
Just write. I think that that's the main thing. Just write anything. Even if it's bad, just keep writing it. If you don't write, you won't get better.
This is the most simple and most important tip on becoming a better lyric writer. Just write. You can't get better at writing lyrics if you don't write lyrics. Even if it's just 10 minutes a day, write something every day and don't judge it. Apply these tips and see the difference it makes. Catch you next time.
Catch you next time.
Oh, I like the monkey suit analogy.
Hi.
We don't have a
Hi.
monkey, but we do have a unicorn.
I agree, though. Every day is the thing.
Great to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you.
I understand you have a hard time writing due to hooves.
Well, you got to get the pen in.
Can't hold the pen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to learn to write with your nose.
Yeah.
Don't smell my pencils. Yeah.
Or the horn. If you can write with the horn, then you're
there. You go.
Golden.
Yeah, I like the advice he gave about, not muddying the waters and things like that. Keeping on track with your theme and your song. I know you were just mentioning about working the backwards, the monkey business. Because sometimes it's not always right the first time. So you got to be consistent. If you wrote something 20 years ago, maybe take it back out. Lingo has changed over time. So you also want to make sure that people understand your language, or that you've used it creative enough that they can see exactly what you're trying to say. Put yourself in that environment. So I like what he was saying there, like make sure that it's vivid so people can envision your music.
Yeah.
Not just feel it, but envision it.
If you're taking the monkey suit kind of approach, you're kind of telling the same story from a different perspective. You're giving it an analogy, like the SOS, I'll send an SOS message in a bottle. Even though Sting's writing about one thing, he's giving it that analogy of, like, I'll send a message to the world. It's a good way to approach it.
And then I like in that one how he twists it back around and then says, you know, when he woke up, everyone else had sent a message in their bottle to him.
Yes.
So that's kind of like an unexpected, you know, he used that cliche and like flipped it over at the end of it.
And that's something we were actually talking about before the show, surprises. How you bring surprise into your music. You don't want to be too predictable. You want to sprinkle it with unexpected surprises.
Yes. Like in the Bangles Manic Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another.
I think Tony's gonna bloop in a minute.
Hey, SR, how's it going, man?
So I do have to tell you that we were talking about this before this show. Actually, one of my favorite books is How to Write a Hit Song by Molly Ann Leakin. And she has done so much work. And, you know, when he was saying about, you know, creative writing, and I know Uni, you know, we were just talking about writing and being consistent writing every day, because that's key. Make sure that when you choose what your song wants to be about, that you think about everything. So if it is a shoe, you know, talk about the heels, talk about the soles, talk about the laces, talk about the color of your shoes, talk about, you know, if it's lost its tread, if it's cowboy boots, you know. If you want to give me your shoes, you can keep them. Okay. But you want to kind of evolve off that idea and grow, so that way when you build, it'll be a little bit easier and your story starts kind of piecing itself together a little more cohesively.
Her shoes on the beach, polka dot blue.
Did they get wet and filled with sand too? There
you go.
That's a little bit of rhyming stuff, but you don't always want to rhyme in your stuff either. So you also want to make sure when you write, you know, what your topic's about, so you deliver the message and not so much thinking about rhyming your story, but telling your story. What do you think
Good
on
point.
that one, Uni?
Well, I think rhyming is an interesting thing. Sometimes people start to rhyme a lot, and it sounds like they're singing a Dr. Seuss book. And so sometimes what I like to do specifically with rhyming is, I said I don't like to, you know, write stuff down, but it's not true. When I want to do something more complicated, sometimes I'll rhyme two and then skip one, and then rhyme two others, and then skip that next one, and try to come up with a pattern, and then make. It's weird. It's like try to make the music or the melody carry that instead of just the rhyme.
Yeah, but that's perfect, because, you know, you should be catching it with the melody. The melody of the song usually should be captivating, and the lyrics should just be enhancing that, you know, just like that canvas. That melody's that canvas, and then those lyrics are just, you know, everything becoming life and more vivid to paint that picture. Something I actually use, if there is a song, or you'll see in a lot of rap and hip hop, there is a lot of rhyming. And so I actually use I don't know if you can see it very well, but this is a songwriter's rhyming dictionary. This one is by Kevin Mitchell. See, I'm like blobbing it out, and it's not even green. Look at this. So it's by Kevin Mitchell. And pretty much any word that you can think of, you know, because sometimes it isn't the whole word that has to rhyme, but just maybe the ending. So it kind of gives you a little bit more of an idea, especially if you're in a thought process. I can't think of a word to go with this.
Well, sometimes I like to use what I'll call like a slant rhyme, which is not like everything doesn't have to rhyme exactly,
Right.
which I think again contributes to that sort of Dr. Seuss, that Cat in the Hat kind of feel. But so to just use like like the word line and the word time, they don't rhyme exactly, but sort of those vowel sounds make it work. And
Right.
so I find that to be just a way to, to not be exactly rhyming. And sometimes just like have it not rhyme at all, just let it not work.
Yes. And usually though, you need to find like if you rhyme with it, you don't want to over rhyme, and you want to make sure that you line it up to bring in that hook, because that hook is everything. You're hooking people in to listen again.
And you were talking about the rhyming dictionary. Sometimes I'm working on something, instead of having a rhyming dictionary, I just go to like Rhyme Zone or whatever. And so actually I did this with Turia Art. She did a song, and I just made a big list of shun words: objection, perfection, rejection. And I didn't know which ones I was going to use, and I just left that list like sort of up. And then as I was freestyling it, but like sort of quasi freestyling, where I was like saying, "Oh, I'm going to try and come up with a sentence that will end with one of those shun words."
Like perfection.
And I didn't really know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew that I was going to like squeeze in as many of those as I could.
Yeah. I love that though, because it does give you a chance to inspire and create, kind of open your minds a little bit to more vocabulary. And that's a beautiful thing, especially when they were talking about not generic writing and actually expanding what you're saying in your lyrics and your words.
And
hi, welcome back, Tony.
I do want to push back a little. I kind of like using like sort of a lot of words, because sometimes I think unusual words actually describe what I'm thinking better than some of the other words. Yes. And sometimes people accuse me of sounding like I swallowed a thesaurus, but
love it.
It really, I swallowed a thesaurus. So, I mean, what are you going to do?
They can swallow a dictionary. Yes, a thesaurus is awesome. Very much so. I've used that very many times too. And you guys can find it right online. Oh, Tony blipped out again. So let me ask you, Nee, when it comes to songwriting, do you normally keep your chorus hooked in with your title?
I think sometimes, right? It depends. I mean, it's an easy way for, especially when talking about a song with another person, to be able to reference the right song. But sometimes I think just a line in the song might sort of sum up the feeling I'm looking for. Okay. But it's interesting. You were talking about titles. A thing I like on BandLab a lot is that when people write a song and they title it something, I feel like it's more collaborative to try to, what I call, Rorschach in their title, because they called it, whatever they called it, and then I try to work that in, and that way, I don't know. It's kind of like if I was making a spaceship and you said, "Hey, you can use any part in the whole world," it's actually a little easier to make an invention using some limited, like saying you only have access to that old blender and that old bicycle. And so if I have like unlimited is harder, but like sort of that defining the edge of the page makes it a little easier somehow. So I like when people on BandLab title their stuff, especially if they title it and I can feel how it fits.
Yes. So you could actually build that title around that piece and start, maybe even I know when I've written songs too, I've also looked at, maybe I don't know so much about that topic that somebody titled something. And so that encourages me to go ahead and learn, go learn more about that.
Yeah, like what is a square inside a sphere, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, the circle should not fit where the square should be. Extreme said so.
Boom.
But I've also found that sometimes with my own not forked projects, but sometimes with the lyric writing and the music, I can title it something, and I can go ahead and work through that song and it's something else.
Oh, and sometimes I start singing somebody's song that they titled really cool, and I'm gonna work that in, and 3 minutes are up, and I forgot. So,
And sometimes I just randomly start covering everybody's song in a total complete mashup.
I've heard her do that.
yeah.
Yeah. Cover this.
Well, I liked your question on whether the chorus, you get your titles from the chorus, which, you know, typically the chorus does lend itself to the title. It tends to be the theme, but sometimes the meaning is hiding in those verses.
When I write, typically a lot of times my title, that song you definitely know is about whatever my title's about.
Yeah, you're good with your titles. Hello
And
there.
if you give me a theme, and if you give me a theme, you know, like I'm going to work to build it around that theme. I'm going to try to feel you.
Which I think, don't you have a couple of songs that are all about feeling?
I do. I do. Yeah.
Do
It's
it with
how I
feeling, right?
feel. It's how I feel. I know that's one of
Oh,
them.
man. I thought you were talking about number 1 is pee, number 2 is poo, number 3 is everything you do.
Well, that's a
4
different
is
kind of feeling.
like captain, everything pours out your flap. Oh, wrong song. Okay.
Still feeling.
It is feeling. Hopefully you'll know which bathroom to use by the end, though.
Number 2, I think.
Oh.
Well, and they all work. All feelings are good in music if you can write about them.
I saw this one. This one is good.
Yeah. This is the second video from this channel because I really could not just pick one. These two
Well, lady.
are awesome. And are you familiar with the flip method? Because I see it like all over the songwriting YouTube videos as I was searching. The flip method gets mentioned a lot.
Well, let's check it out.
So this one's the crazy easy trick to write great lyrics. The flip method. Also coming
use
from
it?
how to write songs.
Yeah. Use it.
Yeah, we're going to flip it.
Flip it real good. On Talkin IT.
Highly educational.
Wear a helmet.
Cliches are everywhere. They are encoded into the way that we think and express ourselves in such a pervasive way that we just don't even notice they're there most of the time. When I say the view was breathtaking, or I'm dead tired, or my heart was broken, they just pop up and I don't even think about it.
The thing about cliches is they're really useful. They're a shortcut to meaning and understanding. The problem with cliches is that if we use them without changing anything, they generally sound dull, boring, and lazy. So how do we use these cliches in a way that exploits this preloaded meaning, but stops us cringing when they do pop up in our lyric writing?
In this video, we're going to show you the flip method and guide you through 6 different strategies for flipping cliches into some of the best lyrics you'll ever write. Flip number 1, replacing. With replacing, what we're looking for is a cliched expression or phrase that contains a word or an image that can be easily replaced with something else. The key to this, and where the fireworks really happen in the ear, is that the expression itself should trigger the cliche. So let me give you an example. When I say, we fight like, your brain naturally fills that in with cats and dogs. So the beginning of that cliched expression, we fight like, triggers the cliche in the mind of a listener. They fill in the blanks because it is so familiar. So in order to introduce the element of surprise or novelty, we're actually going to swap out cats and dogs with anything but cats and dogs, basically. So if I said something like, we fight like rust and rain, well, that is new, that is something different, that is something novel. It creates the delight of surprise, but Trojan horsed inside something familiar.
So once we understand how this flip method works, we can start experimenting with all sorts of different word pairings. We fight like tree roots and concrete.
We fight like secrets and loose lips.
We fight like a toupee and a sudden breeze. Oh, I like that one. That one's good.
Any of these is not only more interesting than the original, but it actually has the effect of shining a brighter light on the alternative combination you've come up with because you have subverted the expectation that's created by starting the phrase in the familiar way, but finishing it in a novel or surprising way. An example of this from a contemporary songwriter is the song Wild by John Legend. So the hook of that song is, I want to drive you wild, wild, wild. Now that expression, I'm going to drive you or you drive me blank, immediately triggers the word crazy. That's the expression, that's the cliche. You drive me crazy, I drive her crazy. So to replace crazy with wild actually uses the familiarity of that expression, but shines an even brighter light on his hook, which is wild.
Flip number 2, magnify. In Roxy Music's 1975 hit Love is the Drug, we hear the metaphor laid out plain and simple. Love is the drug and I need to score. And this metaphor has been used by many songwriters over the years because it is such an effective metaphor. We've got this comparison between drugs and love that makes perfect sense to us. There's the intoxication, there's the highs and lows, there's the bliss, there's the withdrawals.
There's the addiction.
All of those things. It makes perfect sense, which is why we're drawn to using it as songwriters.
The problem is, it's been done and kind of done to death.
Yeah. So how do we take this concept, which is a really good concept, a really good comparison, and use it in our writing, but avoid the cliche?
So the flip here about magnifying is taking something that's already familiar and almost like double clicking on it, zooming in on some specific detail that is related to that concept, but using the detail instead of the cliche. So here are a couple of examples.
In Lord's song, Rider in the Dark, she has the line, I still feel you now and then, slow like pseudoephedrine. And this is such a great example of zooming in where the word drug is not being used in a general sense. We're hearing very specifically the kind of drug. And it draws our attention to this specific drug and it gets us thinking about all the effects and the nuances of this particular drug. And that in itself is very clever because it helps Lord describe the nature of the relationship, not just making the comparison in a generalized way.
She's also magnified in not just on the specific drug, but also on a really unique linking quality between what she's describing, which is love or thinking about this person, and actually what the connection is to the particular drug. So in this case, it's not just addiction. She's magnifying in on the concept of slow, like pseudoephedrine. So it's not just I'm addicted, it's highs and lows. Actually, all those connecting things are also in themselves cliches. And what she's doing is she's showing us a new connection between a familiar combination of ideas.
And it's, again, such a great choice of drugs in this particular context because it's not a glamorous drug like cocaine. She's choosing essentially a cold and flu medication. And so the image of her, trying to recover slowly from this fairly inane thing, using a slow release off the shelf drug, it just paints a beautiful picture about the nature of their relationship.
I do want to say just quickly, if you want to explore some of these methods in more detail, I've created a free ebook that you can download in the link in the show notes that's called The 5 Best Exercises for Writing Better Lyrics. So go and grab it right now. Flip number 3, extending. Extending a cliche is when you take a common or familiar cliched expression, you take it as it is, but you actually extend or elaborate on the expression by introducing new words or images that are actually related to the images inside the cliche. So let me give you an example straight away. If I take a cliched expression like the conversation flowed, I could extend that cliche by taking the word flowed and using some more water imagery. So for example, I could say, as the conversation flowed, I started to drown in the undercurrent of everything I didn't understand.
So in this way, you're really using the cliche as the launch pad for a more interesting line. You're doubling down on the imagery.
I'm doubling down on the imagery. And not only in this case am I doubling down on the water flowing imagery, but I am subverting the expected meaning of the cliche, right? Because usually when you say the conversation flowed, it means the conversation was easy. But here what I'm doing is I'm using the imagery inside the cliche to actually say the conversation wasn't easy. The flowing nature of the conversation is what made me feel like I was drowning drowning. But the magic here happens because there is a connection between the words flowed, drowning, and undercurrent.
And the extension doesn't have to be that long. You could say the conversation flowed like honey. And immediately we're thinking about this conversation that's slow and drawn out and kind of oozing. It just gives you such a great visual for the nature of that conversation.
Let's do another one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm looking up a list of cliches online. You can just Google list of cliches or list of common idioms or common expressions. So I'm looking for one here that has some kind of image in it or word in it that I can extend. All right. Okay. So here I found one that is eat our words. So I think about the word eat, and that's an interesting one because eat has lots of imagery related to it, right? Like there's food and there's chewing and there's spit and there's mouth and there's words, and there's also like you eat when you're hungry, right? So I think about the connection between eating and hungry, and immediately, okay, I can extend that by saying we were hungry enough to eat our words. Which is really interesting, right? Because it has created a completely new meaning out of a familiar expression.
The song Case of You by Joni Mitchell, I think, is a beautiful example of this extension that occurs over the 4 lines of an entire chorus. You're in my blood like holy wine, tastes so bitter and so sweet. And bitter and sweet, you know, that's pretty expected in a way. It's the last 2 lines that are surprising and deliver all the joy and satisfaction for the listener. I could drink a case of you and still be on my feet. And here we see Joni Mitchell extending the initial metaphor to really make her point. And that is, she's so intoxicated with this person. She's so in love with this person. She could drink a case of them and still be standing, which is impractical. You can't drink a case of anything and still be standing. But that's the way she's chosen to express this metaphor. And it works beautifully when those last 2 lines land.
Taylor Swift is also a genius at this. If we look inside the lyric of her song All Too Well, we can find this line, we were a masterpiece until you tore it all up. So describing something as a masterpiece is a really cliched expression, a really cliched way to describe something as like exquisite and wonderful and amazing. But she extends the image by saying it was this thing, but then we tore it all up. And that extension of the cliche recasts the whole thing in a completely new light.
Flip number 4. Inverting. In this flip, you're turning a negative into a positive or a positive into a negative, or essentially taking a cliche and finding its opposite.
This particular flip strategy relies on finding a cliche or an idiom for which this can really work. And it's not going to be every cliche that works like this, but some work really well. So if we take an expression like, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, we could say the grass is never greener on the other side. So we're literally just stating the opposite of the known cliche.
Rather than replacing one word with its opposite, we can also do this flip in a slightly more subtle way. So if we look up another idiom or another phrase, and let's go with actions speak louder than words. We could flip that and say actions cower in the shadow of words.
Whoa.
And it's still the same idea. It's still the opposite idea, but we've played with the language a little bit to be a little bit more dramatic and not so straightforward.
You know what? That actually reminds me of another John Legend song that uses that exact cliche and uses our first flip strategy. Okay, so call back to first flip strategy, but actually starting with this phrase, actions speak louder than words. His lyric in his song Actions, the whole hook there is actions speak louder than love songs.
There you go. Nice.
John Legend, what a cool dude. See what I did there? Flip 5 relies on finding a cliche or idiom that has 2 words or images where you can take them and actually swap their position and create something that still makes sense. So again, it's not going to work for everything that you're going to find, but you need to look for expressions or phrases where there are these 2 components that can actually swap places and still make sense. So an example of this might be something like the cliche, there's no time like the present. And by swapping time and present, I come up with something like, there's no present like time.
It's amazing how the meaning instantly shifts and you're there thinking about it in
Totally.
a whole new different way. Another idiom might be storm in a teacup. If we flip it around, we get teacup in a storm.
And it creates this really interesting meaning, right? It makes you think about what does that actually mean? Because someone who makes a storm out of a teacup is someone who makes a big deal out of kind of nothing. So someone who can make a teacup in a storm is someone who can take a chaotic experience and make it really manageable, something like that, right? So it's completely different. It creates a new meaning, but it creates it out of something familiar, which gives us the comfort of familiarity with the delight of surprise.
It also gives you this added benefit of taking you into some new territory for idea generation. So I suddenly started thinking about people on the Titanic as they were going down, the ones who were there sipping their tea in very expensive suits, and what kind of scene that must have looked like. It will take you places that you didn't expect. So from an idea generation point of view, it's really fun. Flip 6, pairing. Flip 6 is a little different to the previous strategies because rather than just thinking of cliches as famous phrases that we all know, we're going to look at cliches as really predictable or common ways of pairing words.
For example, pairing hot with cold, night with day, up with down, soft with hard.
Which makes perfect sense that we have those pairings because we learn pairings that way as children.
And predictable pairings are not just about pairings of images. Predictable pairings also come as rhymes, right? So predictable rhyme pairs: pain, rain, love, above, fire and desire. Don't do it.
No more.
So we're going to show you an exercise in how to create new and surprising pairings, some of which are going to take the predictable aspect, right? Like using a word like hot, which immediately conjures related words that we've heard because of the frequency of usage, but we're going to replace the frequent pairing with something completely new and original. So here's how the exercise works. If I give you an expression like, if you are a bird, then I am the... and leave that blank, your challenge is to fill in the blank in 10 different ways. Now, we totally anticipate that the first 3 or 4 that you come up with are going to be cliches, and you should absolutely embrace that. In fact, you want to embrace that. You want to get out the predictable things to actually get to the underlayers of more interesting pairings. So the predictable things might be like, if you are a bird, then I am the...
wind.
If you are a bird, then I am the...
clouds.
Right. But more interesting things might be something like, if you are a bird, then I am the rifle.
Which, of course, is from a Laurie McKenna song called The Bird and the Rifle.
Which is an incredible song, and you should absolutely go and listen to it.
We are always on the hunt for songs and compositions that use these techniques that we're talking about.
So if any come to mind for you, please let us know in the comments and share them with everyone. If you're interested in more ideas, tools, techniques, and inspiration for your lyric writing, make sure to check out this playlist that we have made just for you. Happy writing, guys.
Oh, again, awesome advice coming from them.
And
I
it's
like
funny.
I like the flip method. That's a very useful approach.
And it's funny, Tony, because when you were gone, actually, UMF and I were talking about cliches and also rhyming and breaking up words with rhyming. So that was really cool.
Well, and they give you some suggestions on how to avoid the typical cliches because those are the ones that make people yawn. When you
Oh,
I think he's gonna
frozen.
poop again. Yeah. Well, there was a cliche. There's been a song that I have been in the process of writing for a couple years now. And it talks about water to your flame. And, you could even flip that backwards. Flame to your water, gonna make you boil. So they were talking about different flips and cliches. I don't do none of that, Tony. It all depends, I think, on, to be honest, with the melody, if there is a melody, or if the lyrics come first. So I guess it all depends on what comes first, the lyric or the melody, the chicken or the egg.
There's a related phrase, chicken or the egg.
Or apparently the chicken and the machine gun if you're using the flip method.
I know, I was surprised. Bird with rifle. Not expecting that one.
Yeah. But it definitely makes sense.
Well, I do think it's a cool way to have kind of an unlimited supply of just, places to kick off from, though, because you could just pick a really common cliche and then, just sort of turn it upside down.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of the advice you'll see out there when it comes to songwriting, they tend to say avoid the cliches, but here they're kind of suggesting embrace them, flip them.
Yes.
I did one with Father Pat McGroin pretty recently, though, called Adrift. I don't know if you guys heard that, but he wrote this really great music, and it made me think of kind of a nautical theme. So I just did a straight up cliche where, like I said, a ship in the harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are for. And then I went on to describe kind of like how maybe adventure might be more than you anticipated rather than, so like instead of flipping, the cliche by putting something unusual in it, like sort of trying to just defy the cliche.
Yeah, power through it.
And elaborate.
Jake did that last month. Like he took on one of our challenges about how to write a love song, and he was determined to write the cliche love song. See?
And he did it too.
He did, man. Every potential love song cliche, he found a way to get it in there.
I actually watched this video, and that's what made me think of trying to use a cliche. So.
Heck yeah. Inspiration. Sharing that love.
That's what's so great about this particular show to me, though, is it's like ways to, like practical toolbox.
Yeah, a songwriter's toolbox. I mean, that's kind of what we're going for.
Actually, it's more like an artist toolbox, because each week there is something on Talkin IT to learn, whether it's about technology on new instruments or lyrics or, even just chords and notes and progression.
Or other
music
tools,
and tech go hand in hand.
Or AI.
AU?
AI.
No. That's what I meant.
Hey?
Hey. So that one was at HTWS on YouTube. Great new channel that we found this week. Gonna be visiting them much more. Now, prose. This one, Ange, with poetry and prose. This one, I'm curious what your thoughts are going to be on it, because you have a way of writing prose into your lyrics all the time.
I also seen that you included a little bit of Joni Mitchell, which I have been compared to in some of my writing styles.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm interested in seeing some of these really cool techniques.
Well, this one comes from Lyrical Language Lab over at Lyrical Language Lab on YouTube, and writing lessons for kid lit writers. She's got a lot of stuff in here. I mean, she's analyzing how language fits into all of this, which with music and lyricism, that's important.
Absolutely. And, something with writing, and I think anybody that is a songwriter can agree with, if you are feeling an emotion, sit down and write about it. It's not only going to be healing to get it out on paper and for your mental health, but you can actually take that, which you could have 100 bad days, which is a song that, I heard recently, 100 bad days, but it can make 100 good stories.
And it can definitely help you to get through things, and sometimes how to solve things just by laying it out there.
Facts. FAX.
Just the facts, ma'am.
You might have to pay for that.
So this is what is lyrical prose. Plus,
does she have a frog behind her? Sorry.
She does have a frog behind her. Hey, you. And I didn't pick it because there's a frog back there.
It just was meant to be.
Leave it to you to notice.
I spy the frog.
There we go. Lyrical Language Lab. What is lyrical prose?
In this first video in my Lyrical Prose 101 series, I answer the question, what is lyrical prose, and give you the rundown on the tools you need to make your prose more lyrical as well. Hi writers, I'm Renee Latulippe with the Lyrical Language Lab, the place for children's writers to learn all you need to know about rhyme, meter, and lyrical language. This is the first in my Lyrical Prose 101 series of 4 videos. In the remaining 3 videos, I'll be taking a closer look at the techniques I'm going to talk about today as they pertain to middle grade fiction, fiction picture books, and non-fiction picture books. So let's get started. Over the past few weeks, I've received several emails and comments from viewers wondering just what is lyrical language, specifically lyrical prose, and what they can do to make their writing more lyrical. I'll start by giving you my definition of lyrical prose, which is any writing that uses poetic techniques to enhance the poetry and musicality of the language. I was watching a video the other day of Brandon Sanderson, who is a best-selling sci-fi fantasy writer, and one of his audience members asked him what is literary fiction. His first response was funny to me because he said literary fiction are all those books that win the awards, and I found it amusing because it's true. And in fact, the main sample that I'll be using in the middle grade fiction video in this series uses a book that won the Newbery. To make a comparison, popular fiction or genre fiction, it's the same thing, are by those best-selling authors like Dave Pilkey with the Captain Underpants series, or even J.K. Rowling, who sell tons and tons of books, then their books are made into movies and they're all rolling in dough and everybody's happy. But they're not considered literary fiction, and therefore they're not serious contenders for the big awards like the National Book Awards. Getting back to Brandon Sanderson, the second part of his definition was that literary fiction tends to focus on the poetry of language. And that really is what the Lyrical Language Lab is all about, and what lyrical language is and lyrical prose is, focusing on the poetry of the language. So with that definition in mind, what exactly does it mean to focus on the poetry of the language? Simply put, it's the craft of mining the language for all the riches it already contains, and you do that by using poetic techniques. And this is why all writers should study poetry. There are many poetic techniques, but I'm going to focus on the ones that I see popping up most when we're writing for young people. And I can kind of group those into 4 basic categories. My first category is pacing, and under that I put rhythm and meter. If we go back to the idea of a piece of writing as a piece of music, then obviously rhythm is crucial. We want to carry the reader along. So being able to pay attention to your word choices, how you put those words together, your phrasing, this is where also revision comes in, and honing that language down and cutting out all the extra things, all those blips and glitches that make me stumble, so that you end up with a really rhythmic flowing line. And of course, sometimes the rhythm might not be slow and flowing. It might be staccato. It all depends on the mood and the tone you're trying to create, or what's happening in your story, or even your character. The point is that rhythm is crucial, and we need to pay attention to the rhythms that we're creating in our stories. I've included meter under this category as well. Normally in prose, we don't want to go for a fully metrical beat or rhythm because then we're setting up expectations that the thing is going to rhyme or something else that we don't want to do. And in fact, I spoke about that in this video here, so you may want to take a look at that as well. Now, metered lines are something that I see popping up more in picture book prose than I do in MG and YA prose, but I kind of see them all over the place. And I think for the most part, they're probably happy accidents. But knowing meters can really help you attune your ears to those rhythms when they do happen in your writing. So it's important to study those as well, to know when they occur and how you can use them to your advantage. The second category is figurative language, and that's all the stuff you learned in high school. So you've got metaphor, simile, personification, sensory imagery, and even I threw in hyperbole and understatement because those last 2 things are really great for creating humor. We'll be looking at specific examples of all of these things in the next 3 videos in this series, but in general, think of figurative language as the techniques that create the mental pictures in your reader's mind. It's through the techniques in this category that we can really surprise and delight the reader by creating metaphors and similes, comparisons that they hadn't thought of before, showing them things in a new and unique way. The third category, sound devices, is what I like to think of as the special effects. It's your drum roll or your crash of cymbals or your blare of trumpet or your cowbell or what have you. The major sound devices are also those things you learned about in high school: onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, consonance, repetition, and rhyme. And all of these devices can also have a really big impact on your rhythm and pacing. If you think just about alliteration, for example, if you start all of your words with a T, it gives the line a really quick pace. Whereas if you go for some assonance and you have a lot of long O sounds in there, it slows the reader down. And it also changes the mood. So sound, paying attention to sound, is essential when it comes to writing lyrical prose. Like the metered verse I talked about up in the pacing category, rhyme is something that I see popping up more in picture books than I do in MG and YA. However, it can occur just about anywhere, particularly internal rhyme, which I also talked about in this other video that you might want to take a look at. And that brings me to my fourth and final category, diction. It needs to be specific and it needs to be authentic to your purpose. Without proper word choice, all that other stuff is just going to fall apart. And that brings me to my two major key points. Key point number one, all these elements must combine to create a cohesive whole. You can't just start throwing poetic techniques willy-nilly at your writing and call it a day. They must be thoughtful, deliberate, and authentic choices that make sense for your character, for your story, for whatever it is that you want to convey to your reader. Key point number two, quality over quantity. Just as music has different movements and dynamics, so does lyrical prose. And you achieve that by creating a balanced mix of simpler, plainer language lines with more musical lines. We want to avoid veering toward purple prose, which is writing that is over-embellished and overwrought. Instead, our goals should always be a cohesiveness between language and character and story, and the authenticity of the voice. And I'll be getting more into that in the second video in this series, Lyrical Prose in Middle Grade Fiction. And those are really all the tools you need to make your writing more lyrical, musical, and engaging for your reader. And of course, practice, practice, practice. If you have a specific question about lyrical language, please drop me a comment. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing and hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you back here next week for video number 2 in the Lyrical Prose 101 series. Ciao for now.
I want her notification bell. That like literally scared me.
Hey, got your attention, huh? See the importance of sound devices?
So I love the fact that she talked about learning poetry and learning different styles of writing, because that in itself will enhance your evolution in songwriting immensely. And like Uni was saying earlier, practice, 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 even if it's only 10 minutes a day.
Yeah,
but I
it'll
also
always turn into 20.
It does. And sometimes it actually turns into writing and then going to record. So you don't lose that feeling or thought.
And if it turns into 20, that means you're having fun.
For
It
sure.
means, yeah. And also that it's something that you feel has to come out at that moment. You get totally into it. I know, like Tony watched me the one day, like literally the entire day write a song.
Oh, the 2 follow day? Yeah.
And I kept saying to Tony, I am going to finish this song today. I am going to write this song in one day. And he was mentioning about quality over quantity, you know, and I really like, I was putting a lot of thought into that and I just could not put that piece down.
But I also think sometimes, by doing it, say every day, that every single syllable doesn't, you don't maybe, you can sweat over the ones you want, but sometimes you're just going, I'm just going to, sometimes just doing it's enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also liked the point that she said about fictitious and writing stories that, are where a child's mind would be and exploring from that. When you think of some great artists, Pink Floyd, okay, where they're taking their thoughts, and they're putting themselves in a rocket ship, to fly to a different, but they're painting all the pictures in it just like a child's book would. And those fictitious stories, just like, no matter whether you like comedy, horror, suspense, whatever, those fictitious stories are the ones that are the best sellers.
Yeah. And a lot of her advice, I mean, it's generally for writers who are writing stories, especially for kids. But it all applies to music. I mean, she kept mentioning the rhythm of the flow, and that's where prose really comes from, is having a rhythm and a flow to your words.
Also, sometimes when you write the words in a poetry format, or because there's a lot of different poetry, all poetry doesn't have to rhyme. So a lot of times if you do that, and when you're reading it to yourself, the melody starts flowing and starts coming to you, and it starts evolving from there as well.
Yeah, I actually enjoy the poetry that doesn't rhyme sometimes more.
Yeah.
Or like haikus, something where it's got a deep meaning.
Yes, and that's where spoken word is also beautiful, because it is actually taking those poetries and those different forms of it and placing it over top of music, but not singing it, but literally speaking it.
Although there is my favorite haiku of all, which is haiku are beautiful, but sometimes they don't make sense. Refrigerator.
Hey, that's good. I actually understand what it means. So deep,
I knew you
Beauty.
would.
That's awesome.
So that was Renee at Lyrical Language Lab over on YouTube. Check out her multi-part series. I mean, we just got just the tip there.
That was
Is
no
into
pun.
it. I
I
couldn't
still
resist.
come back to the everyday thing too. At one time, none of us could tie our shoes, and now you can do it without thinking about it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the thing. If you can if you want to get good at this skill, you just do it a lot.
Yes, practice makes perfect.
When it comes to singing and singing your words, really, it's a lot like breathing when you're comfortable with it. I mean, breathing plays a big part in your approach.
Yeah.
I'm howling you on whole notes.
So our next one, we're gonna get into a little hip hop and rap here because I couldn't resist this one. I totally agree that like rap that I grew up with, where it's gone since the 90s and how it's lyrically changed. I mean, it really used to be a good form of poetry, and the lyricists out there, most of them were rappers, and they're gonna ask that question: what happened?
Well, and I take notice too, like when we have like Monday Love podcast, we have, a hip hop and rap intertwined with country. So not only has the structure and the lyrics changed, but it's also evolved into other genres as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Well, see, I like
Which
that
kind of
kind.
changed the old school.
Yeah, I like the kind of rap that she's, what do they call it? Hick hop. But there is good storytelling. There's good words in it. It feels like they're getting back to some of this lyrical approach to rap
Yes.
rather than just like, saying the same phrase over and over again for 3 minutes.
Right. And it's very important to catch your listener within, what was that, the first 25 seconds?
Yeah.
You don't want to have your intros too long. You want to captivate that listener, and you want to keep them and hold them. So
And some
going
say,
a in the beginning of it, I'm sorry, but you're starting to lose me already.
yep. Some are saying like get them in 12 seconds. It's getting
The faster,
shorter.
the better.
So this next one is how lyrical rap lost its cool. It comes from Hip Hop Madness at Hip Hop Madness over on YouTube. And if you like hip hop, he covers it all.
This is another one of those channels, though. It's like about a specific genre, but if you listen, it's about everything.
Yeah, it ends up applying to everything. So let's see how lyrical rap lost its cool.
Hit that button. Let's turn on that boob tube.
I am.
This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Stay tuned to find out more.
Does Joyner Lucas feel like he's underrated? You dropped 2 projects this year, and I don't feel like your name is in the conversation the way it should be.
I feel like I'm underrated. It's all about what's working. Like, I don't have records with NBA YoungBoy. I don't got records with Kodak. I don't
Do
have
you
records.
need them, though? I would like to see you with, like, Griselda. You know what I mean? Royce.
That's what I'm saying.
The Spitters.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to see, and I feel like maybe that has been the problem, is that I feel like maybe I keep putting myself in this box. When you just said, oh, I feel like you should do a song with Griselda. What? Like, Griselda, I love Griselda, but I love Royce. Those are my family, but it's like, I don't want to do, I don't want to just do records with lyrical. I'm just relating the lyrical box. Like, nah, bro. Like, that's not where I want to be.
With the exception of the Kendricks, the Coles, and the Eminems of the world, there's a general consensus that masterfully crafting rhymes and high-concept storytelling aren't exactly the choice of this generation. In all honesty, there's actually come a time where those who refuse to accept evolution are doing more harm than good, when at this point, hip-hop should be focused on the future. And while there's ways to retain those traits and remain crucial to the culture moving forward, which we'll expand on later, it's becoming increasingly hard to argue that bars, for the sake of bars, could still captivate audiences. And in fact, we've reached a point where it isn't enough to skate by on lyricism alone. If you were to look at the golden age of hip-hop and compare it to today, it could be argued that the idea of who's the most lyrical only made sense when there were fewer stylistic differences between MCs. At a time where DMX, Jay-Z, The Lox, Scarface, and others were all performing at the top of their game, but ultimately operated in the same territory, the discussion of who's the best rhymer became the only way to differentiate between levels of greatness. But now, in an era where song crafting is prioritized over a dazzling 16 bars, fans have other ways to measure interest in an artist. In fact, it could even be seen in the aftermath of the Nas vs. Jay-Z beef, as while Esco's brutal diss track Ether outshone Jay's attempts to best his enemy on wax, Hove continues to eclipse Nas to this day. In a nutshell, the fact that Jay has found himself held in higher esteem than someone who single-handedly out-rapped him proved that even when bars were seen as sacred, they weren't enough to guarantee a victory when your fellow artists excelled in the other sides of the game. As a result, rapping with technical skill and relying on it as a selling point even has its own derogatory term that's come to represent the younger fans' equivalents of mumble rap. Spawned by much of Eminem's later career, in which he seemed to be emphasizing using as many rhymes as possible, while hip-hop's new faces were using as few words as possible, Rappity Rap caters to those who try to repress the change in what the general public deems to be cool. Speaking of Needle Drop's Anthony Fantano, rapper Screwface Jean believed that those diehard fans have been duped into thinking that speed or technical ability equal quality.
They don't know what is being said, but for some reason, they're just trained to think it's good. It becomes only a problem when it's Playboi Carti, Uzi, or somebody like that, and they can't hear it. Then it's garbage. But when they can't hear that, like flippity flippity, then it's good. It is the same lyrical content. You're at the end of the 16 bars, you're at the same place. You don't learn anything more about the person. You don't learn about what he feels. The furthest they'll go, they're being deep, is saying, why is it that the industry likes these people but doesn't like us? One is choosing to say it in 100 words, one is saying it in 300 words, but it's the same content. It's the same thing.
So I want to take a quick break to thank our friends at Skillshare, a unique service that enables creatives to turn their dreams into reality, taking the knowledge and the know-how to the general public. Skillshare offers thousands of classes that'll provide you with the tools to make headway with your chosen craft, whether it be learning how to rap, make beats, or edit music videos. Skillshare's got you covered. In fact, we leveled up by finding out how to mix this video's music with the legend Young Guru, responsible for sculpting the sound of some of Jay-Z's most legendary tracks. The famed engineer makes the secret to the Prose more accessible than ever before. So what are you waiting for? Skillshare works out to be less than $10 a month with an annual membership. However, the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership and access to their massive learning library. Head over to Skillshare and start your journey now. No longer seeking that same level of insight or gritty street reporting that made hip-hop into a dominant force in the 90s, Lil Yachty acted as a mouthpiece for a new generation when he controversially declared what his intentions for his upcoming project were.
It's just fun. It's not serious. I hate serious rap. It's so boring. Serious rap music puts me to sleep.
Said when he was just 18, Lil Boat's comments garnered the exact response from those hip-hop fans who'd bump regularly early 2000s Lil Wayne, but wouldn't look twice at a Young Thug tape. Angered by the idea that some listeners would rather turn up than digest bars like many of us grew up doing, the hip-hop world that we live in means that to refuse to acknowledge that the marketplace has changed requires stubbornly burying your head into the sand. But when you think of the pillars that have upheld the state of commercial hip-hop as we know it, it's hard to look past not only Thug, and to a lesser extent Gucci Mane, but Future and the Migos. All hailing from Atlanta, these artists took the emphasis that used to reside on the bars and reassigned it to sing-songy flows, repetition, and their own regional styles. And in the case of leading lights such as Uzi, Post Malone, and the late Juice WRLD, they even had a resentful relationship with the limitations of the term rapper.
I don't make rap music, I might rap, but I don't make rap music. I just make whatever I like. You can't really categorize it or put me in a box or anything, I think it just comes out. I don't want to call it a genre. I don't want to put myself anywhere that people want to put me in. I just want to be myself and, keep working.
So, when this is the view of what the Billboard charts and the mainstream audiences see as hip-hop's leading lights, where does that leave the lyricist? Well, the answer is that you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, straight too far from what you're known for, and your fan base will accuse you of selling out. But focus on the craft of bars, and you might be struggling to make a living. With top-tier lyricism no longer serving as a good enough focal point, it explains why North Carolina MC's Rhapsody and her records Layla's Wisdom and Eve could be hailed as some of the finest records of their respective years, but couldn't reach higher than number 75 in the charts. Although he fared well enough to get into the top 10 with ADHD, it's the same aversion to so-called rappity rap that's presented the ceiling on Joyner Lucas's commercial ascent. Likewise, The Roots' Black Thought continues to make his case for top 5 Dead or Alive consideration, but he finds himself tied to a specialized listenership. Produced by Hit Boy in the midst of a comeback year, Nas's return to form in King's Disease came from opening himself up to reevaluation of sounds and features, while Freddie Gibbs' continued success all comes down to striking a balance between the pitchfork crowd and the underground rap market. Meanwhile, Griselda have created a movement around their swaggering brand of Buffalo drug dealer bravado. But as explained by leader Westside Gunn during an interview with Revolt, they succeed because, while Conway the Machine and Benny the Butcher deliver some of the most impeccable bars this side of Raekwon, they don't see themselves as in competition with the new school, but focus on expanding their own niche. Lil Uzi just dropped. I've been waiting for that. NBA Youngboy's doing his thing. Everybody's doing their thing. I love what's going on right now. We're bridging the gap. In tune with Kendrick Lamar's 2017 comments to Forbes, which spoke of the need for evolution and detailed why he wouldn't shun a lot of artists that may not be a Kendrick Lamar, real hip-hop lovers, not the stereotypical old heads, are coming to terms with the fact that the mainstream may not see lyrics as cool anymore, but they still have their place. Praised as one of the finest wordsmiths to emerge in recent years, Nick Grant's words speak to how lyrical rappers can get their fair share at a time where they're basically marginalized. Contending with a world where a catchy chorus is more likely to catch fire on TikTok than MF Doom style bars, the South Carolina MC suggested that wordsmiths need to get out of their comfort zone, or get out of the way. People were saying, okay, yeah, he can rap, but can he make records? He told Revolt in the wake of 2017's Return of the Cool. For lyricists, or someone who people really think can rap, that can be a little difficult. So I wanted to make something different for everybody. I can appeal to everybody. I ain't limited to just verses. Living in a world where melody and immediacy is king, what's clear from all sides is that true lyricism will always have its place as a means of education, inspiration, and to expand minds on a massive scale. But it can only be part of the package, and can no longer serve as a sum total of an artist's appeal. To their credit, major label subsidiaries such as TDE and Dreamville have heeded this shift, and while their artists still tend to put a lot of their stock into the craft of writing rhymes, no two artists on either roster is the same. From Isaiah Rashad's introspective bars, Absol psychedelic, and Kendrick Lamar's Pulitzer Prize winning insights, through to JID's lightning quick wit, Cole's wisdom, and the global perspective of Boz, both camps know that to thrive, your identity needs to be more than just a natural aptitude for spitting. In fact, just rhyming without having the more robust sense of individuality that makes for an Absol or a Schoolboy Q compelling will make you seem like a fossil from an era that's behind us. To some purists, this is impossible to comprehend, and at one stage, Dreamville's founder J. Cole was one of them. But sooner or later, he learned to appreciate this changing of the guard for what it is. As, at the end of the day, there's nothing less cool than being the old man left screaming at the clouds as the wave of culture passes you by.
Years ago, I seen one of the freshman covers of one of the freshman freestyles. Yeah. And I was like sad. Like, I was like, damn, this really over. Like, I know now that I was wrong. All I was doing was being afraid that the thing that like I fell in love with, you know what I mean? Yeah. Was like no longer like relevant or respected.
This has been a Hip Hop Madness original. Make sure to stay tuned and stay up to date on everything we got going on by hitting that subscribe button and notification bell. Oh, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hip Hop Madness and join the movement.
Oh, I would love to get Wally's take on all that.
I'll tell you, he made a lot of good, valid points. And when he was talking about the lyrics not carrying it anymore, I think it's not just in that genre, but it's all over, in every genre, not just hip hop. Because it shouldn't just be the lyrics that carry it, it should also be the melody.
I think you see that a little bit in the kind of like trans genre-ness that's happening in a lot of music now, where it's not limited to like one style through the whole, like a whole like album's worth of stuff.
But I think that's really cool too, though, because it kind of gives a lot of diversity, and it's, opening up your ears, forming that heart, and being open-minded to try new things and experiment.
Well, bringing the other genres into hip hop, I think, is what's saved it. Like, hip hop could have worn out by the end of the 90s, but it mutated. You are seeing genres in hip hop that you never would have imagined back in the 80s and 90s.
It's great, watching Post Malone with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Listening to the country hip hop that's coming out, from down south, and some of the great artists that we've come across and met. Hearing different things on the lab, which I know when the Band Lab community was going off, there was a lot of other suggestions for like subgenres. I think the whole evolution of genres is that there might be, it might already be out there. But we got to educate ourselves. You know, there's probably so many different ways of hip hop that have been forgotten or left behind because maybe there was only a couple artists that tried it, and maybe at that time period it just didn't click because there was the rhyming, like with Eminem coming, you know, and all those artists, you know, Eve. So it was a different time, and they were looking for speed, you know, Buster Rhymes, you know, being really, really fast. And yes, that's what captivated people's ears because they were like, holy crap, check this out. Like, this is something that stood out. So, you know, when I say stand up, stand out, be you, be heard, be original, like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, they stood out from the rest at that time. But just saying, you know, looking into the genres, there's probably so many different genres of hip hop that we are all have experienced or heard maybe a time or two, but don't really know what it is. Um, so yeah, educate yourself. And back in the 80s, like Tony was saying, the hip hop was completely different. The rapping was completely different. Hip hop was actually established to, you know, kind of battle each other, but by using your words and not your fists.
But based on what he was saying there, would you say that that battling and this attitude of bars for the sake of bars was the beginning of losing some of that lyrical importance?
Actually, I just think time progressed and stories changed. People started putting more of their emotions into it and trying to think of creative ways to put that out. It was a different way of storytelling. And then maybe adding a different type of genre into it just kind of enhanced it and made it more enticing for a listener to listen to.
Well, and you had artists competing against each other. There's no other genre that I can think of where artists compete against each other the way they do in hip hop. You don't see country singers like doing diss tracks at each other or rock bands like singing shit about the other bands.
I
Hip
don't know,
hop
the
was
Dixie Chicks
different.
wrote a nice diss track.
Well, those girls are crazy.
I love them.
But that incorporating of other genres, a good band lab example to me. It's not rap or hip hop, but it's like where Web George, Highway 73, and Rollo Knox are doing started doing projects, and sort of pulling in disparate kind of influences in that way. I think that is what makes the future genres.
Oh, you're gonna get different flavors. Anytime you have like a Rolo Knox in your collab, you could get all sorts of flavors.
And I think that's like really bold on both of their parts because like Highway 73 is kind of traditional, and Rollo is like kind of not.
Oh yeah, he's out the box.
Box, right? And
But it's a box with a pretty red ribbon.
But it makes both things more interesting. Who was talking about Reese's on the chat, right? It's the chocolate and the peanut butter, right?
Already destroyed them Reese's. Like, listen. Oh yes, I can eat more Reese's than you can make in an hour.
And so that's
All
where I
Reese's
think
for Halloween.
This guy's channel though, it's not just about rap. It really is about music at large.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a cool channel. Hip Hop Madness at Hip Hop Madness on YouTube. I mean, I really would like to talk to Wally about some of these videos and what he thinks. I mean, he is one of the true lyricists that I've found on BandLab.
Yes.
That's his strength.
Absolutely.
So as we go on from hip hop, this is another one that like is Angie's forte, storytelling. It's been a theme with her since the day I met her. She's the lady of lyrics and she tells stories.
You tell me I'm number one, but you treat me like I'm number two. Come on.
You make me feel like poo.
That's right.
To quote her. So this one is a TED Talks, which I'm sure most people have probably come across one. You know, there's some really awesome ones out there. What I really like with the TED Talks is there's a lot of technology and music integrated into their discussions. And in this case, Stephen Fowler he's going to talk about the storytelling power of music and how when you tell a good story through music, it can last forever.
And I'll tell you on at TED Talks, also on that page, you can pretty much find information about any topic.
Yeah.
Not just music related. So, you know, if you've got questions about something, and all of the people that come up and speak are highly educated and would not steer you in the wrong direction.
Yeah. You get a lot of life advice on top of songwriting advice, tech advice. There's a whole mix of discussions that go on here. It's at TEDx on YouTube.
Including mental health, which is definitely music is therapy.
Oh, and it's a big theme on their videos. So let's take a look at the storytelling power of music.
Oh, hook me in, Tony. Hook
Yes,
me
and
in.
then I want to see what our residential storyteller thinks.
If a picture's worth 1,000 words, how much is a melody? If the pen is mightier than the sword, how strong is a song? If sticks and stones may break my bones and words may never hurt me, how cutting is a chord? What if we thought about music the same way we thought about Shakespeare, Steinbeck, or Seuss? What if we took time to think about the intricacies and beauty and melody and cues of the world around us? What if I told you I could change your emotions right now with just 3 little notes? Welcome to the world of music as a storytelling tool. In the late 1800s, German playwright and novelist Gustav Freytag theorized that there were 5 parts to every story: the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion. Since every story has a beginning, allow me to begin with my own. I've been a musician for most of my life and a storyteller for even longer. Heavenly harmonies and scintillating sentences have been flowing intertwined, making 2 different forms of one universal language of expression. It's taken hold in French horn, hip-hop, jazz, and Haydn. It's taken hold in metaphors, punchlines, puns, and the Oxford comma. But one thing I do know is that music is a universal language of life. My mother was also a band director and music teacher. Band, chorus, orchestra, trips to the symphony, works for NASA, reading, writing, even arithmetic made its way with melodious mention. I believe that music has the power to tell great stories. I believe that it is a cornerstone of cultural understanding that unlocks a new way of viewing the world. But enough about me. This is not meant to be a lullaby. Close your eyes with me. Think about the last time you were happy. The last time you were a little sad. The last time you were a little bit confused. Now think about how many of those involved music. Chances are your musical memories are a lot stronger than, say, the last time that you ate a cupcake, the last time you did laundry, the last time you read something about Donald Trump on the news. There's a reason for that. Intuition might tell you, duh, music's supposed to make you feel a certain way and play with your emotions. The question to ask then is why? Much like the sentence, the quick, lazy fox dog Brown jumped over, doesn't make any sense, even though each individual letter makes up each individual word. The structure and orientation of music is what gives it its storytelling power. Look at this. In Western music, there are 12 notes that make up our octave that we use. The This is like our musical alphabet that we use to tell these stories. Now we take 8 of those notes in a mathematical relationship and form a scale. For the purposes of this talk, we'll look at the major scale, attend a happy sound, and a minor scale, which is kind of sad. We look at these as the words that we use to kind of form our musical storytelling. With these scales, we can form what's called a triad. A triad is a group of 3 notes, each 3 notes apart. These are the words that are the real building blocks of this. Depending on how you organize each of the notes, you can form different triads. Independently, all of those notes make a beautiful sound, but the beauty and the complexity lies in the context of putting them all together. Think about this, for example. Remember how I said I could change your mood in 3 notes? Think about the song Happy Birthday. If I can change just 1 note, it goes from this jovial sound to something of more of a funeral dirge. Take the happy one, for example. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Now listen to the change. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Not exactly the kind of birthday you'd want to hear. Brings me to my next question. What does Bocelli have in common with Barbie Girl? Now before you get up, head towards the exit and ask, what is he doing here? Surprisingly, the 2 of these have a lot in common. This thing called chord progressions and chord structure. Think of it as like a musical roadmap. You start here, you can go here, you can come back here, and ultimately you end up at the exact same place. The chord progressions are the reason why you feel sad when a sad song comes on, the reason why you feel happy when the song ends, and the reason why when you turn on the radio, you're essentially listening to 90 different versions of the exact same song. Check this out. The most common 4-chord progression that we have here is the 1 chord to the 5 chord to the 6 chord down to the 4 chord. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Now check this out. Here's a list of several artists, performers, songs, everything ranging from Eminem to Anya to Let It Go. All follows the same progression. So take a look at these here and listen and see if you can pick out the familiarity as I loop these chords. I saw you humming back there. Now that we know the structure and we see this, you're thinking, doesn't it take a degree in neuroscience to figure out what the biology behind it is, why the brain works, why it does this? Here's the kicker. It doesn't. In a 2005 paper for Nature, cognitive neuroscience Robert Zatorre wrote that music allows us to unlock a hidden way of looking at how the mind works, and unlock a hidden way of looking at how we can look at the world around us. Take humming, for example. Everyone does it, in the car, in the shower, even up on the way to the stage. But have you ever stopped to think at just how much it takes to get that to work? Zatorre calls it a tantalizing mix of practically every human cognitive function. Complex auditory, pattern processing, attention, memory storage, retrieval, motor programming, so on and so forth. A little bit of everything, just to hum out of tune. In a 2013 article, Zatorre wrote that while scientists have long known that music has done something to the brain, looking at it through a neuroscience lens helps find out how. When people listen to music that they described as deeply emotional, it unlocked the part of their brain for reward and emotion and all around just feeling good, releasing dopamine. It's the same reason that when you listen to the swell of an orchestra, the drop in dubstep, that one really, really high note at the end of the chorus of Don't Stop Believing, you all feel the same way. Interestingly enough, so does the climax and the anticipation of that climax leading up to it. Our brain craves music and craves these patterns, and it affects our emotions. It makes you feel things you might not normally feel, and that's because of the way of composers. Take, for example, some popular films. The iconic horror film, Psycho. Our heroine sitting in the shower, taking a shower, about to be stabbed to death. This is the type of music that plays. Kind of makes you want to choose to take baths, doesn't it? Now imagine the same scene is set. The heroine in the shower, somebody coming up from out of nowhere, with this music playing. Not exactly the type of film you'd want to take your kids to. Or think about this, our favorite underwater enemy, Jaws. You all know how that goes. Now imagine if it was given sort of a more cartoonish Bugs Bunny treatment. You're sitting in the boat, you look under the water, you see a shark, but hear this. Not exactly the terrifying creature that we've learned to love and hate. So now that we can tell the brain is shaped by music without any need for an MRI, a brain scan, or an advanced degree, we've seen the structure of music, we've seen the neuroscience behind it, and you might be sitting to yourself thinking, Stephen, so what? Well, it doesn't take a Mozart to master music. If everyone understands the structure and the function and the reason behind music, we can listen to the world in an entirely new way. We can better listen to everything because music transcends personal, cultural, and geographic barriers. The same booming bass you'll find in Ibiza is still the same in Illinois. The reason that Sarah McLachlan's Arms of an Angel is a tearjerker of a song paired with the images of the puppies is because of the chord progression and the longing and the sadness created in the arms of the angel. And the reason we studied a Beethoven is because the complex patterns and repetitions and rhythms that he uses helps us with the same repetition and rhythm as we study. Once we cultivate this awareness of the way music looks at the world around us, we can begin to have a greater control over our own state of emotions. We can engage with music proactively rather than reactively. Oftentimes, we use music to match the mood that we're in. What if we used music to create a mood for us? With this knowledge, one chord at a time, we can be the composers to the soundtracks of our own life. Thank you.
But we are the composers of our own life. Like, if you think about it, like, each one of us is a book. And each day of our lives is a chapter. Or some days just kind of seems more like a page.
And everybody's got a, everybody's.
Oh, Tony's going down. It's you and me, Uni. So, yeah. What do you think about that, Uni? I don't want to like.
I think I think it's true. It and kind of what you put in there might influence your day. I mean, you know, I still like to get up and turn on AC/DC to get going.
Absolutely.
It's like an extra cup of coffee.
Yes. And, you know, listening to him play a couple of notes, I was back here and I was writing in the chat. I think I wrote a whole like little jingle here, like a song actually, because there actually is 2 verses and a chorus in there, if you think about it. And it is pretty catchy, even just looking at the words that I wrote too, just listening to those 3 little chords and seeing what kind of journey it took me. And just because it took me one place, it's going to take somebody else into a completely different destination. And that's the beauty of it.
Was it you, Uni, that mentioned earlier listeners listen to music differently than musicians?
Yeah, I was saying that. I think that's totally true.
Yeah, and actually what he was mentioning there, especially at the end, totally reinforced that.
Well, and I think a lot of artists, they approach it in a kind of a, maybe not like purely, but a more technical kind of an aspect. And I think a lot of listeners, not knowing anything very much technical about it, let it wash over them in a more, I don't know, way I kind of wish I could.
Yeah, a listener doesn't need a lot of details to feel the song. They just feel and hear what they want to hear.
And they don't think about it,
even if it's not what you're saying.
Yeah, and they don't think about a minor third or like a rhyme scheme or anything. They just go, "Oh, that made me feel the right way."
And that's why musicians sometimes can overthink when they're listening to their own work.
Well, do you guys ever have the experience, like sometimes on BandLab in particular, like I make a lot of stuff and I try to put out almost everything I make. And sometimes I go, "Oh, this one's going to be awesome and everyone's going to love it." And like no one seems to respond. And then like a thing I think is a total piece of crap, everyone's like, "Oh my God, that was like the best one ever." And it's so weird because I think I'm not a good judge.
Oh, and I've heard that theme and story from musicians all through my musical life. Like,
I don't think.
Why do they love this one? This is my hit.
And then you're stuck singing cherry pie for the rest of your career. Yeah.
I don't think it's you being too hard on yourself saying, "Why am I not a good judge?" I think you just feel more on certain pieces or connect more with certain pieces. And you're hoping that others, when they listen to it, are going to be able to connect in that same way. But sometimes people are only looking at that title. They're not really, you know what I mean? They're not really thinking of the writing or the concept behind it, or where your journey's taking you. They're, "Oh, it's a title like this, so it's got to be funny. It's a title like this, so it's got to be something about this, and I kind of need this right now as therapy."
I got to admit too, I kind of told a fib. My music is like my kids. They're like children, and I love them all, even the ugly ones.
I feel the same way.
Sometimes the ugly ones are the best. So
absolutely.
Well, and Ange, like you always get on my ass to listen to the words, listen to the lyrics,
yes.
so that you don't just get caught up in the title or the music.
Yes. And your title should reflect your songs. So, even with hashtags, I see people with all these crazy hashtags. If you have a song that is related to a topic, hashtag that, because that's where that hashtag's going to count.
Well, and make sure your hashtags are related to
yeah,
fire. Like, that's not a
go
real
ahead,
hashtag.
Google hashtag fire and see what comes
if
up.
the song is about fire, sure.
Absolutely.
But if you're just going to put hashtag fire on every one of your tracks, then it's not relevant.
But you should also kind of think a little bit more out of the box instead of the hashtag fire. It should be more like, if it was like water to your flame, it could be more like healing. Hashtag healing.
And that would be a good one.
So I got to tell you though, I've come to approach hashtags on BandLab a little bit differently now, which is I want more people to listen to my music. And it's hard to get up out of the noise. There's a lot of people competing. So I go to the explore page on my phone and I scroll through and I see what are trending hashtags. And I do try to work those in there, but a lot of times they're like kind of weird, like, I love this song or whatever. And, but I do think it works. It's not, I don't know. Why should the hip hop guys have all the fun?
Well, and you do use some funny hashtags. You and Rolo are both like good at comedic hashtagging.
Well, I mean, so yeah, I do try to riff on that a little bit because it's obnoxious but it is. I mean, for like a technical standpoint, trying to get heard on BandLab, putting hashtags that are actually being used will get you heard a lot more.
Yes.
But are they getting you heard by the audience that you want?
I don't know. That's one of the reasons I try to do so many cross genre kinds. I have fans who they're going, I don't usually listen to rock. I'm like a rap kind of guy, but you do something weird, man. And so, I think it's kind of like it's kind of like that video back before was saying where you got to try some different stuff and trying to cultivate an audience, get people to think maybe outside their box.
And I can vouch for Uni. He's forked like 70 tracks of mine in the last 2-3 months, and they're all over the genres.
I don't know if it's 70, but man,
It's
one of
damn
my
close.
favorites though. You did that Christina Aguilera song, and that turned out to be like a really hot track, and I felt like that was a risk, like people were kind of like, why? Some of my friends, I don't get why you would do that. But I feel like that pulled in a lot of other people who wouldn't normally listen to me.
I actually totally got why you did it. Slick.
It was, but it felt like that was a risk to me, and I'm glad I did it.
It showed me a whole nother side of you.
That inspiration, that diversity.
Like a goofy guy doing whatever the goofy does, but yeah, I feel like I've been trying to.
You are beautiful.
It was so fun to borrow that emotion from her and put that on there though, and I feel like that was surprising to people maybe.
Yeah.
But that was what was great about it too, because you also put the shock into people. You stood out. Just like all of these big artists, when it comes to singing and songwriting, you made yourself stand out.
And it's just fun to try new stuff, man. You can do the same thing over and over, but it's fun to do new stuff.
Yes, have fun with it.
Okay, I've got our next
more
one.
About it. It's awesome. And listening to those different melodies and the different places that it can take you. Take your time with the writing, listen to it, really absorb it. And not just using like your ears, but use all your senses. Close your eyes and see where you decide to want to go with it. Really tone into all of those notes, and even like the hidden, maybe like crickets or bird chirps or whatever layers are hidden behind of the actual first sound that you hear, or where it carries you to. Kind of paint it mentally. So, that touch it and paint it mentally. Start putting it out on paper, what you're feeling, the emotions. Even like when you were back and first learning how to write, sticking that one word in a bubble and just kind of branching out every thought that you can think of. Taste it. What are you tasting? Are you, where's the story at? Like, use all of your senses to truly paint that picture and take others with you on that journey as well.
And hell, you've got a horn. Use your magical horn.
You doesn't even have to be in tune.
That's right.
Well, if you hit it right,
it just has to be a tune.
It's like a tuning fork. So our next one, our next one's going to be coming from at the Indie Music Lab, and I like these kind of channels because most of us, we are independent artists. That's kind of where it's at these days. It's about the indie artist more so than the big record label artists.
Be you, be her, be original.
And this channel is chock full of indie advice and, how it relates to the commercial market. And this topic, I couldn't resist it because I definitely want to hear your strategy here. lyrics first versus melody first. Which is best?
Oh.
Yeah, this is one I've had debates about, and there's no
I think it's
right
a
or wrong answer.
50-50. I think it's a 50-50. Because sometimes the melody comes first. Like all day, like earlier today, I had just complete like classical orchestral like just sounds coming out, that were just feeding through everything that I was kind of doing to get through my day. And some days you just sit down and write, and after you write, like I said, you read those words and the melody starts forming. So
Well, I have definitely seen you start with a couple of lyrics and run them.
and you've seen me start with a couple melodies and run with them too. I caught the refrigerator.
Yeah, and she went shopping for chicken at the grocery store.
That's a fun thing about trying to freestyle, not like rap freestyle, but like freestyling more singing though, is kind of trying to invent both simultaneously.
I love doing that because I like feeding off of someone else's creation and kind of expressing like what I'm feeling from them. If they're creating something, I wanna be able to feel what they're feeling and build from there, or come up with something that maybe they weren't feeling, but by the end of the song they can feel and connect.
You're conveying the feeling to them.
If they didn't convey it to me first, because Tony, like I have already done songs that I've literally nailed whatever someone was thinking of, and not even know what their concept was until after I wrote it.
Well, that's why you're good at like hearing the music speak the message and finding the right message to go with that mood.
But
I also do feel that's a respect
that's a
thing
talent
too. I think that's a respect thing too, because if someone is taking their time and putting it into their music and expressing their emotions and things like that, it's only fair for me to give that time and really try to feel what they're feeling. Really try to listen just what they have as far as their beautiful canvas has been laid in front.
Yeah,
You're making me think of something too. That a lot of people like music is like sort of a doing activity, and like working together, it's like it feels like it's a lot more of a listening activity.
Yeah,
it is.
Oh, wait to get into recording engineering, like going from being a musician to actually dealing with the like engineering side and mixing side. Listening is key there.
So what does this guy say? Lyrics or melody?
Well, I'm curious. I haven't actually seen which outcome he's going to go with. I think he's going to, like Ange said, he's probably going to be balanced there, and depends on the situation.
He's going to say it's the cock. It's not the chicken or the egg. It was the cock that came first.
Oh, them damn cocks! They're always trouble.
All right, let's check this out. See what he has to say.
The Indie Music Lab. Lyrics first versus melody first. Which is best?
I'm Marcus Lapp with the IndieMusicLab.com. So, wow, my hands literally just farted. So on the macro level, there are essentially two ways in which songwriters approach how they write their song. On one hand, some artists prefer a lyrics-first approach, so that would be having a already well-articulated theme and lyrical concept and an idea before you even think about the melody. Sometimes even to the point of having the lyric completely finished before putting any music to it. Conversely, some artists prefer to start with melody and groove before ever thinking about the lyric. I think this is quite an interesting dichotomy to look into and to analyze. And so today, let's dive in and let's compare these two approaches and find out which is best. The case for lyrics first songwriting is a strong one, and there are a countless number of successful songwriters who use this approach. Possibly the best songwriter to look at who uses this approach is Billy Steinberg. Billy Steinberg was one of LA's top songwriters in the 80s and 90s, and he wrote hit songs like Madonna's Like a Virgin and So Emotional by Whitney Houston, among many others. In an interview with a podcast called Soda Jerker on Songwriting, Billy Steinberg gave his reasons as to why he is a lyrics first writer. Here's his quote: "I find for me, if someone hands me a melody, it becomes more of a mathematical equation of counting syllables and trying to figure out how to write the lyrics to that melody. Then it becomes very conscious, and I can't tap very well into that unconscious stream when I'm trying to solve the mathematical equation of the number of syllables the melody is requiring." So Steinberg's reasoning is quite robust in my opinion. I mean, he's got a bunch of hit songs to show for it, so he knows what he's talking about. And what I gathered from that podcast, which I will link to below if you want to check it out, is that by writing lyrics first, you set yourself up to be more receptive to the unconscious mind. And of course, the unconscious mind is a much better songwriter than the conscious mind. And from his perspective, the alternative of writing the melody first, it seems to limit your ability to tap into your unconscious thoughts. Another example is from Sasha Sloan, and we've talked about her before on this channel. Listen to what she says about being a lyric first writer. So for me, I think it's really funny when people listen to my songs and are like, oh, I love that melody, because I'm never really thinking about melody. I'm only thinking about lyric. It's actually really hard for me to write a melody and then put lyrics to it, and by hard I mean impossible. I like to tell stories, and for me it's easier to do that when I have the concept beforehand rather than the other way around. So, if you are a natural lyric writer and you like lyrics first, then don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't be a lyric first writer. There are countless examples of very successful songwriters and artists who use this approach of writing the lyrics first. Now, the case for melody first writing is also quite strong. Keith Urban has stated that he prefers to nail down the melody and the groove before thinking about the lyric. Another example, Matty Healy, the frontman of the band The 1975, has gone on record to say that he prefers writing the melody and production first, and that he often forms his lyrical ideas as a consequence of the gibberish and the phonations that announce themselves when he's singing the melody. This is a variation on the approach, and you could say it's somewhat of a hybrid, but it's still the melody takes the lead and the lyric follows. And finally, one of my favorite lyricists of today, Andrew Bell, is paradoxically a melody first writer, even though it's his lyrics that speak to me the most. Here's a snippet straight from his Spotify bio. Andrew Bell writes songs by feel. The composition comes first, the melody follows. Only after Bell has an internal reaction to the composition do the lyrics finally come, finding the right words to express what has always been there, but is only now being fully realized. So I hope by now that we all understand that there's no one universal approach that's objectively better than the opposite approach. However, I do think on an individual level, one is better than the other. You just need to figure out which one that is for you. So now let's talk about some benefits and drawbacks of both approaches, starting with lyrics first. First off, one benefit to lyrics first writing is it reduces melodic and rhythmic constraints. Since you don't have to worry about how the song is going to work melodically, you can just put all your effort and time into crafting and telling the most compelling and interesting story possible. Just like if you're writing poetry, it allows for a more compelling and profound theme that comes together as a really cohesive story. Now, the downside to lyrics first is it reduces melodic and rhythmic constraints. You see, it's not obvious to me that melodic and rhythmic constraints are a bad thing. In fact, the evidence is quite clear that putting yourself in a box can be a beautiful thing even creatively. That box could be a particular genre, it could be a tempo, a groove, or a melody. And while not having those constraints there can help you tell your story in a more precise manner, it can also be a bad thing, because if you think of your song as a game, what makes any game possible, much less fun to play, is that there are rules, there are regulations, and there are restrictions. Otherwise, you have no game. It's just chaos, it's just noise. So when there isn't a melodic or rhythmic structure for your lyric to follow, that lack of structure can be a downside, especially if you're the kind of writer and personality who prefers to be calculated and organized. Another potential downside to lyrics first writing is it can be harder to write catchy hooks. This is especially important in genres like pop and rock, where catchy hooks are essential and crucial to the sound of the genre. The lyrics first approach can make it harder to write those really compelling hooks because you're using the lyric as the foundation and then trying to build catchy hooks on top of that, which is much harder to do than if you write the catchy hook melodically and then find a lyric that fits to that. Now, what are the benefits and drawbacks of writing the melody first? The benefits of melody first writing are pretty straightforward. Using the game metaphor again, writing melody and groove first is a proven way to introduce some healthy boundaries and limitations that restrict the lyrical options available to you. Now that might sound like a bad thing, but I would argue otherwise, and here's why. I think the challenge of fitting the best possible lyric inside a predetermined structure actually gives you more freedom. I know that sounds like a paradox, because it is, but again, let's go back to the game metaphor. I'm a huge NFL fan. I love American football, or just football. There's only one football. America. The reason the game of football works is because there are rules and restrictions in place that actually free up the players so that they can not only play fairly, but it allows them to put their maximum effort and grow their skills in a very targeted way. And that pushes them to be not only the best athlete possible, but more importantly, the best football player possible. So if you take that metaphor and you apply that to lyric writing, I think you could say the same thing. It's like, even if you're really good at writing pages and pages of beautiful poetry, that doesn't mean you're a good songwriter. Because a song is a rhythmic structure with boundaries. You've got tempo, you've got key, you've got chord progression. And is anyone really a good songwriter if they can't play well within those restrictions and those limitations? Going back to football, if there were no rules, it would be all chaos. There would be no reason to play the game if there were no rules. And I wouldn't be on the couch stuffing myself with a family-sized Papa Murphy's pizza watching my Eagles disintegrate into a despicable clown show. Now, there are, of course, potential downsides to writing the melody first. I would say the biggest downside is exactly what Billy Steinberg said in that quote from earlier in the video about how writing melody first can put you in a position where you use your conscious mind instead of your unconscious mind, and it becomes this mathematical equation. And as a consequence of that, the lyric can often fall flat because it lacks any sense of authenticity. And we've all heard those songs that force a word or a rhyme or a line in there, even though it clearly doesn't work and it's cringeworthy. That's often a result of writing the melody first and then not being aware of the danger of writing the melody first. Alright, so before we get to the home stretch of this video, if you liked what you saw, you should download my free guide. That's right, I've got a free guide. It's called the 5-Step Guide for Producing Wow Factor Indie Music. This is a PDF that will change your life. I hope that's at least the goal. It's a simple 5-step plan for your next song so that your next song can be better than the song before. And that is what this is all about. So be sure to download that. It's going to be extremely helpful to you, and it's my gift to you for watching this video. All right, back to the video. So you might be thinking, okay, you've made the case for both. Which do you use? So I'm definitely more of a melody and production and groove first writer, although my approach is a lot like Matty Healy's, which I mentioned earlier, in that I will sing the melody and then I'll pay attention to the gibberish and the phonations that my mouth is uttering, because there is often beautiful unconscious magic in those phonations and in that gibberish. So that's my way of writing the melody first, but still tapping into the unconscious by utilizing the gibberish and the phonations and the phrases that might come out when I'm trying to just come up with the melody. Another thing that I specifically love about letting the gibberish and the phonations inform the lyric is that it helps pave the path and answer the questions of like, which rhyme sounds best here? Which word rolls off the tongue most naturally? Now, an example of this is I have a song that's not released yet, so I'm not going to play it, but the chorus lyric starts off like this. It's flickering light, my satellite, my satellite. That was completely from gibberish. I was recording the instrumentation and the melody. It's got this cool 6/8 feel, and I just felt like I wanted to sing a word like flickering light for two reasons. One, because the imagery. So I like to think very much in images and think imagery and let that inform what the lyric might be. You know, it's the old show instead of tell thing. And also what I did there was flickering light was I wanted that word not just because of the imagery there, it was also flickering light. That airflow, that F consonant sounded perfect. It sounded like it belonged there. Not only because of the meaning of the word, but also the phonation, the way that word sounds acoustically. Like, it's not just what the words mean, it's also what do the words sound like when you sing them, because it's just like an instrument that has a specific tone. Certain vowels and consonants have unique tones that fit really well or don't fit well within certain lines or certain sections or parts of the song. So I've just found anecdotally for myself that it's easier to confront the challenges of lyric writing when I know I have a structure to follow. That said, there is a caveat here because I don't actually follow the predetermined melody syllable for syllable. It often happens where a particular word will change the way I phrase that melody, and that's fine. I'm not rigid about it. I just like to start off with a melody that I know I like, and if a lyric comes along that changes that a little bit, one, it can often sound more interesting because there's a little bit more human feel to it, and you break away from the structure a little bit, so you introduce some tension, which is really nice. So I'm not about being rigid and constrained in the negative sense. I'm just trying to write the best songs possible, and writing the melody first helps me to do that, and I just have found for myself that the melody first approach is the best way for me to consistently write good songs. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know in the comments which approach you prefer. Are you a lyrics first writer or a melody first writer, and why? And if you haven't already, be sure to download my free 5-step guide for producing wow factor indie music. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. See ya.
Oh, Uni picked up on the moral of that story as soon as he said it right at the end. Don't be rigid.
It's rigid. That word is like haunting me the last 2 days.
It's rigid now.
Sometimes. This is a word that has followed me the last couple of days, so that's why it's funny.
Oh, you've been rigged?
It was that G sound, you know?
Well, that's like rigged.
It's good to be rigid sometimes.
Yes.
But you want to try to avoid that when you're taking these approaches. Like I definitely have to say I'm like him. I tend to go with the feel approach first, and I like his explanation of the unconscious approach there versus the conscious approach. You hear what the music's saying, and the syllables and the words kind of start to fit themselves in percussively.
It makes me think about Paul McCartney talking about Yesterday, and how he was talking about he came up with the melody and he's walking around the house going scrambled eggs, scrambled eggs. And
well, have you heard her cheese song, Cherise?
But yeah, I think it's interesting because there is, you know, the melody too. Like I think it's possible to play a melody like on a keyboard or a guitar that has kind of like a lot of structure to it, and then, but like when I sing it, it wants to have like more vowels or something happening in there. It's like less structure.
Yeah, the melody I might come up with on the piano to something might not be as dynamic as what a singer will add to it. Like that's what I was saying earlier about Angie's approach to melody.
Yeah,
she can go off time sometimes on purpose just to give that melodic flavor.
I feel like it should be more like a coat rack. I mean, it's not really, it doesn't have to be rigidly adhered to.
As long as it holds your coat.
I kind of don't, I don't think it actually should be like this for the verse this, because even when you go off the top and go off melody, as a songwriter, you may go ahead and record everything, guys, everything. You may go ahead and find that there's a couple killer lines in there, but it didn't all flow the way that maybe that first time did. And then you're taking that melody writing to now lyric writing. So I think it more so complements each other versus going ahead and versing each other. I think one should complement another, because like lyric writing, you're going to lyric write, but then you have to know those lyrics, be able to feel them, to fit them into a melody, to make that canvas that's there speak what your words are saying in those emotions.
Yeah, and that's what he was talking about with that when at the beginning of the video, the Steinberg, I'm gonna go check that video out. That challenge of fitting the music to the melody you're being handed, and that's where you can get rigid. That's where you can start feeling like you musically can't get out of your box.
Do you guys have a hook book? Do you like? I
actually. Oh, Ange got books.
I just like I have a. Though I use my phone now, but like I just hear phrases. People say phrases that catch my attention, and I'm not really thinking of them melodically, but I'm thinking, oh, that could be cool in a song. And then
Oh yeah.
And then
I'm
suddenly-
gonna work on one called Tongue Dippers.
yeah,
Tongue
exactly.
dipping. Tongue
And then
dipping. Yep.
you're not sure exactly how you're going to work it, but then you hear a piece of music and you go, oh shit, that would totally fit like on that would work there.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure. It's not totally like lyric oriented, but it's also, I don't know. Somehow the melody is a little bit organic in that way.
That's what we're gonna call them now, huh? Tongue dippers.
No, that's a song that I'm gonna be writing. It's called Tongue Dipping.
Oh.
I want to hear the rest of the song.
Whoa.
You actually took it to a place where it isn't. So
I
my
am a
little
man.
sci-fi, like my fiction storytelling will be coming into play on that one. So it may not be as explicit content as you may think. Yep. So
You're always full of surprises.
But I like that because in things you know, like the hook book, you know, you do hear certain things that catch your attention, whether it's a word, a phrase, a line, and you're like, you know, just like flip the flips. Okay. Your mind is flipping it to something else creatively, and it inspires and, you know, just evolves from there because you never know where the story's going to go. Highway 73 could have left me down, you know, on the house on the left-hand side, or it could have left me Disneyland. Okay. So you never know where it's going to take me. I'm still the Jetsons backpack, honestly, but
Oh, and
yeah,
the hook
that's-
will make a great theme for one night. That one will be
hey,
coming.
you know what? That would be really cool to, you know, challenge to write a song called "The Hook" that hooks you.
Or it's about Peter Pan.
I was gonna say it's about pirates, right? Yeah.
Arr.
We're gonna get you in that pirate hat.
Oh, jeez.
So that was at the Indie Music Lab. Great channel for independent musicians out there.
You know,
a lot of good advice.
One more thing about that specifically, though, I think what it really made me think is should really maybe try both of those approaches.
Yeah.
Yes, experiment. Because like I said, one leads to the other. They kind of go hand in hand. That I don't think they should be against each other. They should be more, you know, how they can mesh together. Because whether it is, there's two parts of it.
Yeah, how
You
they
know,
can
or it's just-
complement.
or it's just a song or a poet. Like, you know, there's two. You need the lyric and you need the melody, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Or one stands alone.
Yeah, and
It's
he's-
either a cappella or it is, you know, an instrumental. So,
And if you feel like you're a particular one or the other, it just feels like it might be worth consciously trying the other one a few times.
Exactly. He recognized where he tends to come from, especially with the engineering and music writing side. He recognized that that's where he tends to start. But he acknowledged that, like, you got to get good at coming at it from. Sometimes you have to come from the other side because somebody's throwing the melody at you.
I think it's also a great way to really expand your mind in a different way. You know, it's like if you use your right hand all the time, like it's hard as heck for me to write with my left hand. But if I practiced and I wrote with my left hand, then I would be just as good with both hands. You know,
It's hard
maybe
as heck
not
for
just
me to
as
write
good, but you know
with
what I
either.
mean. I'd be closer. I'd be closer than what I am now.
It also makes me think maybe, say you were like a lyrically oriented person and a melody emerged. Maybe that's still not your strongest one, and so you might be able to steal your own melody and retool that maybe with some other words.
Work on a different part of your brain.
Oh, my whole brain needs work.
Sorry, I'm a nut crack.
Well, and speaking of melody, our last video is all about that. How to put
lead-in
melody to lyrics. Yeah, I've been drinking milk, Ange. I'm learning.
It's doing your intros good.
And I didn't realize that like this channel is DAWter, which is a cool name.
Very cool.
And yes, it's at
I
DAWter
love her
Songs
hair
on YouTube. Oh yeah, well it's pink here.
Alice Cabre.
Yep. So this is at DAWter Songs on YouTube, and it's how to put melody to lyrics. You know, this has been what we're talking about, and how to pull that melody out of those words.
Very cool.
And I wouldn't call it a hack. She does, but I call it a technique.
No, I'm a hack.
No, you're a horse with a horn.
Oh, that's funny because the popular opinion is I'm kind of a jackass with a horn, but yeah.
All with love, Uni.
Oh, yeah.
Hee-haw.
Hee-haw.
Okay, so how to put melody to lyrics from DAWter.
Hey there, my name is Elise, here to talk songwriting with you. Now, one of the most common questions I get is how to put melody to lyrics. So in today's video, I'm going to show you a really simple songwriting hack that you can use to find the perfect melodies for your lyrics. But before we start, just a quick reminder, you can download all 20 of my favorite songwriting prompts in my song starter kit, which is available for free download. Just hit the link in the description. Let's get into it. Firstly, we need some lyrics to start with. So if you've got some of your own, that's great, you can use those. But if you don't and you're starting with a blank page, a good way to come up with some catchy lyric ideas is to Google some of your favorite songs and copy and paste the last line out of those songs into a document. That will give you a list of possible lyric ideas that you can play around with. This is actually prompt number 4 from my song starter kit, and it's a really good tip to come up with ideas quickly when you're stuck. Now, rhythm is so important in melody writing, so it's something I really want you to think about carefully when you're coming up with melodies. In order to find the natural rhythm of a phrase, all you have to do is just say the lyrics as if you were speaking in conversation. For example, I want to write a melody for the phrase, needed something more exciting. So I just say it like that, needed something more exciting. Needed something more exciting. Now I want you to listen for the natural stresses in the phrase. Needed something more exciting. Needed something more exciting. So we've got stresses on something more exciting. So it's the some and the sighting. So let's try tapping that tempo. Needed something more exciting. So you want your stresses on the downbeats. Needed something more exciting. And then in your right hand, let's try tapping the rhythm. Needed something more exciting. Needed something more exciting. Ba-da-da-ba-da-da-ba. That's your natural rhythm. So just as we did before, we want to start by saying the phrase as we would in conversation. Needed something more exciting. But this time we want to listen for that natural melody in the phrase. When we talk, we actually use a lot of different pitch changes to help us communicate our meaning. If we didn't, we'd all just be sounding monotone and boring and sound like robots. Needed something more exciting. It doesn't sound very natural, right? But when I say Needed something more exciting. I'm using different pitches. Needed something. So I've got 3 pitches that are the same at the start. Needed some, and then I drop thing. Needed something, and then it repeats. More exciting. That second note might actually be a bit lower. Needed something more exciting. So if we were to draw that on a piece of paper, we would have 3 notes that are the same. 1, 2, 3, and then go down a note. And then back up. 1, 2, 3, and then go down a note, but a little bit further. So that's the natural shape of the melody. Next up, we want to transfer that to an actual musical melody using notes. Step 4 is grab your trusty piano. This is mine. If you don't have a piano at home, there's a whole bunch of apps, free apps on the App Store. I'm using one called Piano with Songs. It looks like this. So here is my piano. Now what I want you to do is start by picking a note that's preferably within your vocal range. La, 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 la. That'll do. So we had 3 notes that were the same. Needed some, and then we went down. It doesn't matter which note you choose, just pick one that sounds good to your ear, as long as it's going down. Needed something, I don't mind that. Needed something, and then we had 3 more notes that were the same. More exciting, and then we went down a little bit further. Needed something more exciting. Oh, that's cool. Needed something more exciting. So let's add in some bass notes. Needed something more exciting. That's really nice. Needed something more exciting. That's a really cool idea. All right, so let's try a different example. What about I Don't Want to Waste My Love, which is the last line from Gautier's Heart's a Mess. I don't want to waste my love. Say it naturally. I don't want to waste my love. I don't want to waste my love. I don't want to waste my love. Da 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 da. And for the shape of the melody, I don't want to waste my love. I don't want to waste my love. I don't want to waste my love. Da da da. Waste my love. And the pitch variations in speech are really subtle, so you might sort of get a different thing each time depending on how you say it, but you want just something close. So I'm going with okay, that makes sense. So we'll grab our trusty piano. So we're starting with the same note 3 times once again. And the next note was a bit lower. And then the last one was waste my love. I don't wanna 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 waste my love. Cool, I like that. I don't wanna waste my love. Da, 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 da. Great hook. I don't wanna waste my love on the way. I don't wanna waste my love. Da, 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 da. I don't wanna waste my love. Down, down, da, da. I don't wanna waste my love. Da, 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 da. Okay, I'm already hearing a song there. So you can see how easy it is to start riffing on these ideas that come to you. And the melody that you end up with might not be exactly the same as what you started with. I mean, I'm not sure if that rhythm was exactly the same as where I started, but it doesn't matter. You want to let your creative intuition take over. And these exercises are here just as a starting point, something to start with to set you off on this journey, okay? So that's it for this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed the content. And if you have, please like the video and hit subscribe. I'll be posting a whole bunch more song starters in the next few weeks.
Oh, I did like the video, Elise, and I did subscribe. Look.
She did that on purpose. Because I was totally like, she was, as she was going through it, you know, she was setting herself a tempo based on the structure of the words, you know, which is a very good concept and way of doing it. Or, like she said, it doesn't always end up the same, because then your words start forming emotion and then it starts changing and evolving.
Well, and that's why she was like saying, say it normally first.
Yes.
And then find the emotional points in the words to get that melody shape that she was showing. I love seeing melody shape like that, because you're not caught up in the notes there. You're not looking at a musical staff. You're just looking at up, down, down, up. You're seeing the wave, the flow of the melody.
Right, exactly. And I don't know how many times I said today, just speak your lyrics and it'll start forming.
I thought it was interesting to see her pull out the piano, and actually, I've never done that, and I'm gonna totally try it.
Well, and I like her tapping, like the way she would, when she said find the rhythm, you know, in the phrase. I like her approach there. That's something anybody can do. Anybody can just tap it out.
But at the same time, don't lose your story. That's most important. You don't want to lose that story, that, you know, what your song is about in that process. Phrasing it wrong can totally throw off an entire story.
Yeah, don't force things. If it feels like you're forcing something in, whether it's the rhythm or words that you want to say, but they're not fitting with everything else, you don't want to force music. The listener hears when it's forced like that.
There was like a... Oh, go ahead.
If you feel like a piece is getting forced or that you're struggling with it, just put it away for a little while. Walk away from that piece and come back. I believe there was the video before this had about the quality of your piece. So, you know, just because you start writing a song doesn't mean you have to finish it in one day.
Yep. Unless it's to follow.
I thought there was a secret hack in there, though, that's really cool. Maybe if like a song wasn't titled and you were looking for things to do, I'm going to go through and find some songs and write down the last line of the song. Possibly like in my hook book. I thought that was a really interesting way to sort of seed the cloud.
I'm glad you brought that up, Uni, because another thing that I do, sometimes when there is like a melody or something that I'm listening to, if I just kind of play off, even if it's las or, you know, humming or something, it kind of finds its own little melody on top, and it kind of, the lyrics start kind of just being created, and they just kind of, it's like they're speaking to you.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard her speak in oohs and ahs like all night.
But so yeah, great point, Uni.
But that was a lot of fun. This was highly educational.
Well, thanks so much for letting me participate. This is my favorite BandLab stream. I learned something every time, and I feel like I learned even more this time.
You know, same here, especially when Ange is a special guest. Not that Glenn doesn't blow my brain up, but like with this tonight, this topic, couldn't have asked for a better special guest.
Whoa.
Lady of Lyrics. And always awesome to hang out, Uni. Thank you.
Bet. Hey, can I just mention that Crunkle and I are doing something tomorrow night and on the Angified network. I just did
10 p.m.
10 p.m. Eastern time.
And that should be really interesting. He's got a couple of really interesting things. Something that almost should have been on maybe on Talkin SHHH SHHH I.T. And I think people might really like that, and a little bit of extemporizing live. So,
oh yeah, the what he's playing with the VR. We will
Yeah.
have it. We will have a VR night if.
Yeah. I'm
so
gonna have
anyway,
to learn my
come
VR.
back tomorrow night if you. It should be interesting.
We start off at 9 p.m. Eastern Time with Marshland, and then 10 p.m. we have Crunk's Mischief, Mayhem, Music, and more. Whoa!
It's gonna be
Unicorn
a full
Mid
night.
First. It definitely is. So, fill in for Friday.
Oh, fill in for Friday.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Let's write the songs of tomorrow today.
Oh, and speaking of, I'm gonna end a little differently than I normally do because we mentioned this song and how hard Ange worked on it. Did not stop until it was done. So I'm gonna end it off with one of my favorite songs that you have ever done. Like it, truly a piece of art.
You know, it's really funny as I actually stopped playing this song because I had artists come to me that told me that, and I literally watched artists cry in front of me on the words, the lyrics of the song.
Oh, especially
So-
when you got gray in there and the
My
way
favorite color is gray on Band Lab. Yes.
Yeah, the way the two of you blend, especially for the finale, is just
Yes, David on the flute, Glenn on the bass. Absolutely. Rob
So-
Chadwell on piano.
yeah, awesome piano he did there.
Yes.
So we're gonna say good night, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Uni, Ange, so much fun. And we'll
Rest your
see-
noodles now. You got some writing to do.
Yeah, and get ready for tomorrow night because we're gonna shake those noodles up.
That's right. Fuck yeah. Night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
In the beginning, we were born. Then we grew. Everything we knew was new. I know we can show our children a better future. One that we would all understand. One that would join us all together.
ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some BandLab clips.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice. 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.